reborn with the fox, and something worse, they feared the demon brat. He became the fucking Primordial. This Diablo Naruto crushed shinobis like roaches, deleted legends mid-resurrection, and made Orochimaru run crying. Women blushing, legends broken, world kneeling. This primordial demon owns everything.
Four-root Anbu, elite. The kind of operatives who didn't exist on any roster, whose faces had been scrubbed from memory by Danzo's personal seal work. They'd been given a simple mission: eliminate Uzumaki Naruto, recover the body, deliver it to Lab 7 for dissection. The asset had grown unpredictable. The Jinchuriki container was showing anomalies that made the sealed fox look like a secondary concern. Danzo wanted answers. Dead answers were still answers. The alley was dark. The kind of dark that Konoha's back streets specialized in, where the streetlights had been broken for months and nobody filed a maintenance request because nobody cared what happened in the parts of the village where that boy walked home. 4 blades came down simultaneously. Chakra-enhanced steel, sharpened to split atoms, plunging into the small frame from 4 directions at once. Spine, heart, throat, liver. A textbook execution pattern. The blades went in. They did not come out. The steel dissolved. Not melted, dissolved like sugar in boiling water, eaten away by something that lived inside the body they just punctured. The wounds they'd made filled with black smoke. The smoke didn't rise. It pulled inward, swirling back into the boy's frame as if his body was a hole in reality that was sealing itself shut. Naruto Uzumaki straightened his black jacket, adjusted his white gloves, tilted his head at an angle that suggested mild inconvenience. My, he said. His voice was too smooth for a 7-year-old, too measured, too old. To interrupt a peaceful evening with such blunt instruments, how utterly unrefined. The Anbu leader, codenamed Crane, didn't hesitate. He'd been killing since he was 6. He'd assassinated 3 Kaj-level targets in his career. He cycled through hand signs faster than a civilian eye could track and unleashed a great fireball directly into the child's face from 4 feet away. The flames roared. The alley lit up orange and white. Naruto raised a single finger, his index. The white glove caught the firelight for exactly half a second before the light stopped. End of world. A sphere of absolute black appeared between his finger and the oncoming flames. It was small, the size of a basketball, but it pulled everything toward it like a drain in reality. The fire didn't explode against it. The fire didn't redirect. The fire ceased. It was there, and then it was gone, and there was nothing in between. The sphere ate the flames, ate the heat, ate the light, and then collapsed back into the finger that had birthed it. The 4 Anbu stood in darkness again. Naruto's red eyes, those wrong eyes, black where white should be, crimson where blue once was, swept across them with an expression that might have been pity if it weren't so clearly amusement. Kukuku, 4 of you. Danzo must think so little of me. Or perhaps so much. I haven't decided which is more flattering. Crane moved. He was fast. He was genuinely, horrifyingly fast. His tanto came down in an arc that would split a normal skull in 2. It passed through smoke. Naruto's body was there, and then it simply wasn't. Where solid flesh had been, there was only black vapor, swirling like something alive, reforming 3 feet to the left into a boy adjusting his cuffs as if he'd merely stepped aside at a formal gathering. Physical attacks, Naruto said, the corners of his mouth turning up. How quaint. He raised his hand, palm open, and the world changed. Temptation world. It hit all 4 of them at once. There was no visible technique, no chakra signature, no hand signs. One moment the Anbu were standing in an alley in Konoha. The next moment they were somewhere else entirely. Their bodies remained standing, but their eyes went wide, then wider, then impossibly wide as something reached inside them. Past their training, past their mental conditioning, past the seals Danzo had placed on their tongues and minds, and gripped something fundamental. Their souls. Crane saw his mother. He saw her the way she'd looked when he killed her during his initiation. But this time, she didn't die quickly. This time she burned. Black fire, slow, eternal. And she looked at him the whole time with eyes that said, I know what you became, and the burning went on, and the second Anbu saw every person he'd ever erased. They were all in a room with him, The room had no doors. They were all asking the same question at once, and the sound was a frequency that stripped paint from sanity. The third one simply screamed. Whatever he saw, whatever the temptation world fed him, it broke through root conditioning in less than a second. Root conditioning that was supposed to be unbreakable. He screamed without sound because his body had forgotten how to produce it. The fourth one dropped to his knees and began clawing at his own face. Naruto watched all of this the way a man watches rain from a window. Mildly interested, faintly amused. He walked forward, his polished shoes clicking on the alley stone, and he touched each forehead with his index finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gentle taps. The kind you'd give a sleeping cat. They crumbled. Their bodies came apart like ash and wind, gray and then gone, dispersing into nothing. No blood, no bones, no evidence. Just 4 patches of dust that would wash away with the next rain. Naruto pulled a handkerchief from his breast pocket, dabbed a spot of ash from his glove, and continued his walk home. 3 blocks away, in a windowless room beneath the Hokage monument, Danzo Shimura sat in front of a crystal ball relay. His face was stone. His exposed eye did not blink. His hand resting on his cane had gone white at the knuckles. 4 elite operatives, gone in under 30 seconds, erased like chalk marks on a wet board. The boy hadn't even been breathing hard. Danzo sat in that chair for a very long time. The candle on his desk burned down to a nub. He did not move. He did not summon another team. He did not make a single order for the rest of the night. For the first time in 40 years of moving in shadows, Danzo Shimura chose to do absolutely nothing. Because for the first time in 40 years, he recognized something that operating manuals and contingency plans could not address. That child was wrong. Wrong in a way that had nothing to do with the nine-tailed fox. Wrong in a way that made the fox look like a house cat trapped in a cage with something it couldn't name. Danzo never sent another team. Inside the seal, in the vast waterlogged corridors that served as Kurama's prison, the nine-tailed fox pressed itself against the farthest wall of its cage. It had been doing this for 7 years, since the moment of birth, since the moment it had felt the seal activate and found itself sharing space with something that made its own millennia of existence feel like a candle held up to the sun. The fox did not rage. The fox did not roar. The fox whispered. "You're in a good mood tonight," Kurama said, its voice barely above a murmur. 9 tails curled around its body like a protective blanket. "Did you enjoy that?" Naruto appeared in the mindscape. He looked exactly the same here as he did outside. Black suit, white gloves, red eyes gleaming in the dim corridor light. He smiled at the fox the way one smiles at a pet that's learned a new trick. "Enjoy? What an interesting word." Naruto tilted his head. "I suppose the way one enjoys swatting a fly that's been buzzing near one's ear, brief, forgettable. But the cessation of noise is pleasant enough." Kurama said nothing else. It pressed closer to the wall and closed its eyes and pretended to sleep, because pretending to sleep meant the thing wearing the boy's face might leave sooner. The academy years passed like a montage of barely contained disaster. Naruto attended classes because the third Hokage asked him to, and the third Hokage was the only human being in this village who had shown him genuine warmth. Old, fading, frequently exhausted warmth, but warmth nonetheless. So Naruto went to school. He sat in the back row. He wore his black suit among children in shorts and t-shirts. He answered questions when called upon with perfect accuracy and an accent that made the instructors feel like they were the ones being tested. Iruka called on him once during a history lesson about the founding of Konoha. Uzumaki, the first Hokage's wood style. What was its primary tactical? Hashirama's Mokuton was a cellular mutation derived from an aberrant fusion of earth and water nature transformations at the genetic level, Naruto said, his red eyes fixed on a point somewhere past the chalkboard, as if looking at something far more interesting that only he could see. Its primary tactical application was large-scale battlefield control, but its true value was its ability to suppress Biju chakra through resonance interference. A neat trick, somewhat inelegant, but effective for its era. The classroom was silent. Iruka's chalk broke in his hand. That is correct, Naruto. Of course it is. Naruto returned to whatever internal landscape occupied his attention. The child next to him scooted his chair 2 inches further away, There was the incident with the rocks, a group of older students, 12, 13 years old, the ones whose parents had told them what the demon brat was, caught Naruto on the training grounds after hours. 5 of them. They had rocks. They were brave in numbers, the way cowards always are. The first rock was thrown. It stopped. Mid-air, 2 feet from Naruto's face. It hung there, held by nothing visible, rotating slowly like a planet that had lost its orbit. Naruto didn't turn around. He was reading a book. Where he'd gotten it, nobody knew, because it appeared to be bound in leather that was too dark to be any animal hide from this continent. Gravity collapse, he murmured. Almost to himself, the rock reversed course. It floated back toward the boy who'd thrown it with dreamlike slowness. The boy was frozen, couldn't move, couldn't run. The rock drifted until it hovered an inch from his forehead. Then it tapped him, gentle, light, like a mother tapping a child's nose. The rock fell. The boy's legs gave out. He collapsed onto the grass, shaking, tears streaming, though the rock hadn't actually hurt him. What hurt was what he'd felt during those 3 seconds. A pressure on his chest, on his mind, on something deeper than his mind, that told his every instinct that he was standing in front of a predator that had chosen mercy on a whim. The other 4 ran. Naruto turned a page. The teachers learned quickly. Mizuki tried to fail him on the written exam. His hand shook so badly when Naruto looked at him. Just looked, nothing more. Just those red and black eyes meeting his across the grading desk, that he marked a perfect score and excused himself to vomit in the faculty bathroom. Nobody in the academy understood what Naruto was. They understood that he was wrong. They understood that the air felt heavier when he was irritated and lighter when he was amused. They understood that dogs whined and pulled their leashes when he walked past. They understood that the Hokage himself visited the boy's apartment once a week and always looked older when he left. But they didn't understand. How could they? They were children playing at being soldiers in a world that had never seen something like this. Something from before. Something that wore the skin of a boy named Naruto Uzumaki, the way a hurricane wears a name given to it by weather stations. Graduation came. Naruto passed without comment. He was assigned to Team 7. The morning of the team assignment, Naruto arrived at Training Ground 3 at precisely 7 a.m. He materialized a small table, a chair, a teapot, and a cup, all from thin air, pulled from some pocket dimension or conjured from raw matter, nobody was sure, and sat down to wait. Sasuke Uchiha arrived at 7:30. He saw Naruto. His eyes narrowed. The last Uchiha had spent his entire young life cultivating the image of the strongest, the most talented, the most driven. And then there was this boy in the black suit who made teachers physically ill with a glance and who had never once been seen training. "What are you doing?" Sasuke asked. Naruto poured his tea. "Waiting. Would you like a cup?" "We're supposed to be preparing for the bell test." "Kukuku, are we?" Naruto sipped. "I see no bells. I see no sensei. I see a beautiful morning being wasted by anxiety." He gestured to the empty space beside him. "Sit. Your tension is unpleasant." Sasuke did not sit, but he also didn't leave the general area of Naruto's table, which was the closest thing to compliance anyone had ever gotten from Sasuke Uchiha without threatening his life. Sakura arrived at 8. She saw the table, she saw the tea, she saw Naruto's red eyes and black suit, and immediately stood next to Sasuke as if proximity to normalcy would protect her from whatever that was. "Is he having breakfast?" she whispered. "Tea," Sasuke said flatly. "He's having tea." "On a training ground?" "Apparently." Naruto smiled at both of them. It was a genuine smile, and that almost made it worse. "Good morning, Miss Haruno. Mr. Uchiha, I trust we'll have an educational day." Kakashi Hatake arrived 3 hours late. He appeared in a swirl of leaves on top of a training post, one hand raised in greeting, his visible eye curved in his signature apologetic crinkle. "Yo, sorry I'm late. A black cat crossed my..." He stopped. Naruto was on his 3rd pot of tea. He looked up from his book, a different one now, thicker, with pages that seemed to shift color when you weren't looking directly at them, and regarded Kakashi with the patience of something that had never once experienced being in a rush. "Ah," Naruto said. "The sensei arrives. Hatake Kakashi, son of the White Fang, student of the 4th Hokage, bearer of the Sharingan you keep hidden behind that headband." He sipped his tea. "I've been quite looking forward to meeting you." Kakashi's eye narrowed. The easy, lazy posture didn't change. Kakashi was too experienced to show alarm outwardly, but something in his chest went cold. The way this kid spoke, the way he sat, the way the air around him felt 3 degrees cooler than the rest of the training ground. "You've done your homework," Kakashi said lightly. "I find preparation to be basic courtesy." Naruto set down his cup and stood. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his gloves, and clasped his hands behind his back. "Shall we begin? I believe you have 2 bells to offer us." Kakashi stared at him, then at Sasuke and Sakura, who were watching this exchange with the expressions of people at a tennis match where one player had brought a gun. "Right," Kakashi said. He produced 2 bells and dangled them. "The rules are simple. Come at me with the intent to kill, or you won't get these. You have until noon. Whoever doesn't get a bell goes back to the academy." Sakura and Sasuke shifted into ready stances. Naruto remained standing straight, hands behind his back, head tilted slightly to the left. "Whenever you're ready," Naruto said. To Kakashi, as if the Jonin was the one who needed permission to start, Kakashi threw the first kunai. It was a test, a probing attack to gauge reaction speed. Standard protocol. Naruto didn't move, his shadow did. The shadow on the ground beneath his feet stretched upward like a living thing, forming a hand of pure darkness that snatched the kunai from the air. The shadow hand squeezed. The metal screamed, actually produced an audible noise, a high keening shriek, and then crumpled into powder that fell like black sand. "Shadow detachment," Naruto said, naming the technique like a man introducing a guest at a dinner party. Kakashi's visible eye went wide. Sasuke took a step back without realizing he'd done it. Sakura's hand covered her mouth. My, Naruto smiled. "Is that all? I was hoping you might take this a touch more seriously, Sensei." Something shifted in Kakashi. The lazy posture evaporated. His hand went to his headband and pushed it up, revealing the spinning red of the Sharingan underneath. 3 tome, rotating, drinking in every detail of the boy in front of him. "You asked for serious," Kakashi said, his voice dropping an octave. "Remember that." He moved. Jonin speed, the kind of speed that made Chunin look like they were running through water. He closed the distance in a blink, fist already cocked, aiming for a pressure point on Naruto's shoulder that would disable his arm. The fist hit smoke. Naruto's body dispersed like ink dropped in water. Black vapor parting around Kakashi's strike and reforming 2 feet behind him, completely untouched. Naruto was already adjusting his cuffs as if the near miss had ruffled his outfit rather than threatened his life. "Physical attack nullification," Naruto announced. "You'll find that hitting me is rather difficult." Kakashi spun, earth style, headhunter jutsu. His hands hit the ground, the earth opened beneath Naruto's feet. Naruto didn't sink. He floated. His feet left the ground entirely, hovering an inch above the gaping hole as if gravity had simply decided he was exempt. "Gravity collapse," Naruto murmured, and the technique reversed. The hole in the ground collapsed inward, sealing itself, the earth compacting so hard it turned to stone beneath his floating shoes. Kakashi launched Lightning Blade, the S-rank assassination technique, blue-white lightning screaming in his palm, ozone burning the air, the chirping of 1,000 birds filling the training ground. He rocketed forward with killing intent that was absolutely genuine because his body had recognized what his mind was still processing. This was a real threat. Naruto sighed, the kind of sigh that suggested he'd been hoping for more. Temptation world. No hand sign, no visible technique, no warning. Kakashi was running one moment and then he was somewhere else. His legs kept moving, but they carried him nowhere. The training ground was gone. Konoha was gone. Everything was black, and then it wasn't black. It was that day. The cave, Rin, his hand, the lightning, the sound she made, the look in her eyes that forgave him even as they dimmed. Every variation, every angle, every possible way that moment could have played out where she still died by his hand. Hundreds of timelines, thousands, each one burned into him with a clarity that made the original memory feel like a faded photograph by comparison. The black fire, the consumption. His soul being eaten one layer at a time, stripped like paint from wood, and beneath each layer was another version of that day, and another and another. Kakashi fell. His knees hit the dirt of the training ground. The real training ground. He was back. The Sharingan spun wildly, trying to record, trying to process, trying to make sense of the 4 seconds that it felt like 400 years. He was shaking. Hatake Kakashi, the man who'd been in ambush since 13, who'd faced S-rank criminals and tailed beasts and the Yellow Flash's enemies, was shaking on his knees like a fresh genin in his first kill. Naruto stood over him. He reached down with delicate fingers and plucked both bells from Kakashi's belt. The metal rang softly, a cheerful sound. There we are. Naruto held the bells between thumb and forefinger, admiring them in the morning light. Then he walked to where Sasuke and Sakura stood frozen, Sasuke with his Sharingan barely activated, two Tomoe spinning uselessly, Sakura with tears on her cheeks though she didn't know why, and held one bell out to each of them. For you, Miss Haruno? A bell dropped into Sakura's trembling hands. And for you, Mr. Uchiha. Sasuke took the bell. His hand was steady, his voice was steady. But his eyes held something that looked like his entire worldview being quietly dismantled. What was that? Sasuke asked. A conversation with our sensei, Naruto said pleasantly. I believe we've passed. On the ground, Kakashi was pulling himself together, slowly, piece by piece, the way you rebuild a house after a storm. He pushed himself upright. He pulled his headband back down over the Sharingan. He looked at Naruto with his one visible eye, and in that eye was something that hadn't been there in a decade: uncertainty. You all pass, Kakashi said. His voice was steady, almost. We start missions tomorrow. Naruto tapped his chin with one finger and smiled. Kukuku. Excellent. I do hope they'll be more stimulating than today's exercise. He turned, and his table, his tea set, his book, all vanished as if they'd never existed. He walked away with his hands clasped behind his back, humming a tune that nobody recognized, leaving behind a traumatized Jonin, a confused Kunoichi, and an Uchiha prodigy who had just realized that power had dimensions he'd never imagined. The weeks that followed were surreal for Team 7. D-rank missions, catching cats, painting fences, pulling weeds. The kind of busy work that was supposed to build teamwork and humility. Naruto completed them instantly. The cat was found because Naruto's shadow stretched across half the village and located it in seconds. The fence was painted because Naruto conjured a wave of darkness that coated it perfectly, and then changed color to match the client's request because he found the original color aesthetically offensive. The weeds pulled themselves out of the ground when Naruto pointed at the garden and murmured something nobody caught. Kakashi watched all of this from behind his book, pretending to read, actually using every sensory technique in his arsenal to try and understand what he was dealing with. He'd submitted a report to the Hokage after the bell test. It had been brief. Uzumaki Naruto possesses capabilities beyond S-rank classification. Recommend immediate reassessment of his placement. Request additional information on his sealed tenant status. Personal assessment. The fox is not the threat. The third Hokage had read the report, smoked his pipe, and told Kakashi to keep watching. The Wave Country mission request came like a gift from a bored universe. Tazuna the bridge builder, bandits on the road, a simple C-rank escort. Except it wasn't, because it never was, and Kakashi had lived long enough to know when a client was lying about the threat level. But the team needed field experience, or rather Sasuke and Sakura needed field experience. Naruto needed something. What he needed, Kakashi couldn't figure out yet. They set out. The road was quiet, the sun was warm. Naruto walked behind the group with his hands clasped behind his back, examining the countryside with the detached interest of a tourist visiting a quaint but ultimately unimpressive foreign village. You know, Sakura said, trying to fill the silence, this is my first real mission outside the village. How exciting for you, Naruto said, and he meant it. There was something in his voice, faint, buried, but present, that suggested he found her simple enthusiasm genuinely charming. Like watching a puppy discover a garden for the first time, Sakura flushed and looked forward again. The demon brothers attacked an hour later, 2 Chunin-level shinobi bursting from a puddle on the road, their chain connecting them as they wrapped it around Kakashi and pulled. Kakashi dissolved. Substitution. A log. But the brothers were already redirecting toward Tazuna, chains singing through the air. Sasuke moved first, kunai in hand, intercepting, buying time. Naruto snapped his fingers. Black lightning. 2 arcs of electricity, wrong-colored, black as pitch, crackling with something that smelled like ozone mixed with sulfur, leaped from his fingertips and struck both demon brothers simultaneously. They didn't scream. They couldn't. The lightning hit their nervous systems and simply turned them off. Both men hit the dirt mid-stride, sliding to a stop at Tezuna's feet like packages delivered to a doorstep. Their eyes were open, conscious. Their bodies were completely unresponsive. The will to fight had been stripped from their muscles like data wiped from a disk. "How unrefined," Naruto said, examining his gloved fingertips. "Ambush tactics from a puddle, in a country that hasn't seen rain in 2 weeks." He looked at Tezuna. The old man was pale, hands shaking around his sake jug. "I believe there are details about this mission you've withheld, Mr. Tezuna." Kakashi reappeared. He looked at the 2 paralyzed Chunin on the ground, looked at Naruto, looked at the complete absence of combat having occurred. His one eye said a lot. "We should talk about threat escalation," Kakashi said to Tezuna. Tezuna talked. "Gato. Mercenaries. A man named Zabuza Momochi, Demon of the Mist, former member of the 7 Swordsmen, hired to kill the bridge builder and everyone protecting him. Sakura was afraid. Sasuke was eager. Kakashi was calculating. Naruto smiled. "A demon, you say?" His red eyes brightened with something that could only be called anticipation. "Fu. How delightful. I haven't met someone with that title in quite some time. I do hope he lives up to it." The bridge. Morning. Fog rolling in off the water like a living thing, thick enough to taste, blinding enough to turn the world into a gray nothing that swallowed sound and direction alike. Hiding in mist technique, Kakashi identified, snapping into combat stance. "Everyone protect Tezuna. This is mist," Naruto said. He stood at the front of the group, looking around at the gray with an expression of supreme displeasure, like someone had served him room-temperature soup. "How dreary." He snapped his fingers. The sound was barely a whisper. But what followed was a roar. Black flames, demonic fire that burned at the fabric of reality itself, exploded outward from its position in a sphere. The flames touched the mist, and the mist died, boiled away. The water in the air was incinerated so fast that the bridge steamed. The lake surface below erupted in vapor. The mist was gone in 2 seconds, 3 at most. What was left was clean, clear air and a perfect view of Zabuza Momochi standing on the bridge railing 50 feet away, executioner's blade slung across his shoulders, his bandaged face split by what might have been a grin. Well, Zabuza said. "That was new." "You must be the demon," Naruto replied. He hadn't moved from his spot. His hands were clasped behind his back. "I was told you held that title. I confess I'm already disappointed." Zabuza's eyes narrowed above his bandages. Behind him, the silent presence of Haku, masked waiting, shifted ever so slightly. "Kid's got a mouth?" Zabuza said to Kakashi. "Yours?" Kakashi was still staring at the spot where the mist had been. His Sharingan was spinning. He'd seen the technique. He didn't understand the technique. The Sharingan could copy ninjutsu. What Naruto had just done was definitively, absolutely, beyond any possibility of argument, not ninjutsu. "We're still figuring out the dynamic." Dao Kakashi managed. Zabuza launched. He moved like his name, a demon of water and blade, crossing 50 feet in a heartbeat, the executioner's blade coming down in a diagonal arc that could bisect a building. The sword weighed more than most children. It moved faster than most kunai. It was aimed directly at the blonde boy in the black suit who hadn't uncrossed his hands from behind his back. Naruto caught it. 2 fingers, index and middle. The blade stopped between them like it had hit a mountain. The impact sent a shockwave down the bridge, cracking tiles, pushing Sakura and Tezuna back 3 feet. Zabuza's arms shook with the reverberation of absolute arrest. The sword vibrated between those 2 fingers, humming like a tuning fork, going absolutely nowhere. Naruto looked up at Zabuza. Red eyes met furious, disbelieving ones. "You call yourself a demon?" Naruto's smile widened. Something in it was too sharp, too hungry. "How insulting to my kind." He kicked Zabuza. 1 kick. A simple, straight thrust of his leg that connected with the swordsman's midsection. The sound it made was wrong. Not flesh meeting flesh, but something closer to a cannon firing. Zabuza left the bridge. He didn't fly. He was launched. A horizontal missile of blood, spit, and broken ribs that tore through 3 trees on the shoreline before coming to rest in the shattered trunk of a 4th. Kakashi's jaw dropped behind his mask. The outline was visible through the cloth, Sasuke sharing and activated involuntarily, both eyes spinning, trying to process what they just seen, failing completely because there was no chakra pathway to copy, no technique to replicate. Just raw, absurd, incomprehensible power wearing a 12-year-old's face. What? Sakura whispered. What is he? Tazuna's bridge plans fell from his numb fingers and scattered across the cracked tiles. Zabuza pulled himself from the wreckage. 3 ribs broken, maybe 4. Internal bleeding, definitely. He'd been hit by A-rank shinobi before. He'd fought Kage. He'd survived encounters that killed everyone else in the room. Nothing in his life had hit like that kick. Nothing had come close. He spat blood, grinned behind his bandages. Because Zabuza Momochi was many things, but sane had never been one of them. All right, he said, raising the executioner's blade with arms that shouldn't have been able to lift it given the damage to his torso. That was a good hit. Let's see if... Haku, Naruto called out, not looking at Zabuza. Looking instead at the masked figure that had materialized at the tree line, senbon between fingers, ready to intervene on his master's behalf. That is your name, yes? Haku froze. The mask revealed nothing, but the body language said everything. How did he know? Your ice release is beautiful, Naruto continued, his voice carrying across the clearing like he was commenting on the weather at a garden party. I can feel it from here. Such a pure bloodline, such elegant crystal formation. He tilted his head. It would be a waste for it to end here, defending a man who was already finished. Zabuza snarled. I'm not. Naruto appeared in front of him. No movement, no flicker, no body flicker technique. He was on the bridge, and then he was in front of Zabuza, and the space between had been skipped like a scratched record jumping tracks. Spatial severance, Naruto said, naming what he'd just done. I cut the distance between us, it's gone now. He smiled at Zabuza from 6 inches away. As are your options. Naruto reached out, his gloved hand pressed against Zabuza's chest, gently, the way you touch a door before opening it. Soul snatch. Zabuza's eyes went wide, wider than they'd gone when the Mizukage's hunter nin had cornered him during his failed coup, wider than they'd gone when he first held the executioner's blade at age 15, because something was gripping him. Something had reached inside his body without breaking the skin and wrapped around something he couldn't name but knew instantly, the way you know your heartbeat, the way you know your own name, his soul. Something had his soul in its hand and it squeezed. One beat. His heart stopped, just for a moment, just long enough for Zabuza Momochi, a man who feared nothing, who had killed without hesitation since childhood, to feel what death actually was, what it tasted like, what it smelled like. The absolute zero of non-existence pressing against him from all sides. Then Naruto released. Zabuza gasped, his knees buckled. The executioner's blade clattered to the ground beside him as his grip failed. He was on his knees, sucking air like a drowning man, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his teeth. Naruto looked down at him, and his expression changed. The amusement dimmed. Something else flickered behind those red and black eyes. Something that might, in a being less ancient and less terrifying, be called respect. You have 2 options, Naruto said. His voice was low, private, just between them. End here, broken and wasted on a paycheck from a man who sees you as expendable meat. Or serve something worth dying for. Zabuza looked up at him, blood on his chin, chest heaving, eyes wild. And what? He rasped. Would I be serving? Naruto smiled, full, genuine. For the first time in this encounter, there was nothing sharp in it. Me. Haku was already on his knees. The masked boy had watched the exchange, had watched the impossible happen. His master, the strongest man he'd ever known, brought to his knees by a child in a suit, had watched and felt something he'd been searching for his entire life since the day Zabuza pulled him from the snow. Purpose. Absolute purpose. The kind that didn't waver, didn't question, didn't die. He removed his mask. The face underneath was beautiful, delicate, sorrowful, and fierce. He set the mask on the ground beside him and bowed his head. I serve Master Zabuza, Haku said, and if Master Zabuza serves you, then I serve you as well. He looked up, and his eyes held something that trembled between worship and relief. I have always sought someone absolute, something that would never waver, never fall, never fail to be what it claims to be. Naruto studied him. A long moment. The wind off the water moved through his black-streaked golden hair. Then he stepped forward and placed his hand on top of Haku's head, gentle as a blessing. "Such beautiful, tragic loyalty," Naruto said, "but you serve a flawed master." He glanced at Zabuza, who was still on his knees, still processing, still grappling with the reality of what he just experienced. "I am not flawed. I am not mortal. I am something this world has never contained and will never contain again." He withdrew his hand. "Rise, both of you. We have work to do." Zabuza rose. He picked up his blade. He looked at the boy in the black suit, this thing that called itself Naruto Uzumaki, and something in his scarred face relaxed. For the first time in decades. The tension of a man who trusted nothing and no one. A man alone against the entire world, drained out of his shoulders like poison from a wound. He laughed, low, rough, raw. An actual laugh. Zabuza Momochi laughed for the first time in years, and it sounded like rocks scraping together, and it sounded like freedom. "You're insane," Zabuza said. "You're 12 and you're insane." "Kukuku, I assure you my mental faculties are quite intact." Naruto adjusted his gloves. "But I appreciate the compliment." Kakashi, who had been standing on the bridge watching this entire scene unfold with his Sharingan memorizing every detail, lowered his headband and said nothing. There was nothing to say. His Genin had just recruited an A-rank missing nin through sheer existential terror and charisma. What was there to say? Sasuke stood beside him, arms crossed, Sharingan still spinning uselessly. His teeth were clenched. His fists were white-knuckled inside his pockets. The power he'd chased, the power he needed to kill that man, had just been demonstrated at a level so far beyond his comprehension that his entire frame of reference was shaking. "I need to get stronger," Sasuke said, to himself. To no one, Kakashi heard him, said nothing, because he was thinking the same thing. Gato made the mistake of showing up. The short, smug businessman arrived at the bridge 3 days later, with 100 mercenaries at his back. He was cackling about cutting costs by killing both sides. He was making speeches about money and power and how ninja were tools to be disposed of. Naruto was sipping tea. He'd materialized his setup on the bridge because they were waiting for Tazuna to finish the final section, and Naruto found idleness without tea to be barbaric. Gato pointed at them. "Kill them all, I'm not paying any of you. Whoever brings me the bridge builder's head gets a bonus." "How utterly tedious," Naruto said. He set down his cup. He stood. He raised one hand toward the assembled mercenaries. 100 armed men, swords, axes, clubs, bows. Demonic fear aura. He released it, active, full. The mercenaries felt it hit them like a physical wall. Their bodies stopped obeying commands. Legs locked. Arms dropped weapons. Bladders released. Eyes went glassy with a terror so primal, so absolute, that it bypassed thought entirely and spoke directly to the reptilian core of the human brain that remembered what it was like to be prey. Every single mercenary dropped, some to their knees, some flat on their faces. One man turned and sprinted off the bridge so fast he ran across the water for 3 steps before falling in. Gato stood alone, surrounded by 100 men who would rather die than take 1 step closer to the boy in the black suit. Naruto walked toward him. Each footstep clicked on the bridge tiles like a clock counting down. "You are a small man," Naruto said, "with small ambitions, who has caused suffering to small people for small reasons." He stopped in front of Gato, towered over him despite being 12. The aura did that, made him feel larger than his body, made the air around him feel occupied by something enormous. Gato's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "I would unmake you," Naruto continued, "but that would rob these people of their catharsis." He turned to the crowd of Wave Country citizens who had gathered at the far end of the bridge, armed with makeshift weapons, ready to fight for their home. He gestured toward Gato like a waiter presenting a dish. "He's yours." The citizens surged forward. Naruto returned to his tea. They left Wave Country with the bridge completed and the population free. Tazuna named it the Great Naruto Bridge, because the old man had watched this child dismantle a dictator's army without breaking a sweat, and felt naming a bridge was the least he could do. Naruto had been mildly pleased by this. The Great Naruto Bridge. How charming. Though I'd have chosen darker stone. Zabuza and Haku traveled with them, hidden, moving through shadow at Naruto's flanking positions, invisible to anyone without a trained sensor's range. Naruto had given them instructions: observe, protect the team from anything he found too boring to handle personally, and report anything interesting. What counts as interesting? Zabuza had asked. Anything that might entertain me for more than 4 seconds. Zabuza had laughed that Scraping Rock's laugh again. You're worse than any Kage I've served. Kukuku, higher standards. The Chunin exams arrived with the force of a political earthquake, foreign shinobi flooding Konoha's streets. The sand, the sound, teams from every major village converging for what was, on the surface, a tournament, and beneath that surface, a seething mess of espionage, posturing, and barely concealed violence. Naruto walked through the crowded streets toward the examination building. Zabuza and Haku were positioned on rooftops above, tracking his path. Sasuke walked beside him, having developed an uneasy rhythm with his impossible teammate, part rivalry, part grudging acknowledgement, part self-preservation. Sakura brought up the rear, having grown considerably braver in the weeks since Wave, but still very much aware that she was the only normal human on this team. A sand shinobi blocked the entrance hallway. Older, larger, face-painted, carrying what appeared to be a wrapped bundle the size of a body on his back. Kankuro of the Sand. He was bullying a younger Genin, lifting the kid by his scarf and laughing. Naruto didn't slow down. He walked directly toward the obstruction and, without breaking stride, reached out and pressed one finger against the back of Kankuro's hand. Just a touch, light enough to miss. Kankuro's hand opened involuntarily. The kid dropped. His fingers had stopped responding. A micropulse of black lightning to the nerve cluster in his wrist, invisible to the eye, devastating to fine motor control. "Excuse me," Naruto said, stepping past the confused puppeteer. "You're in my path." Kankuro spun. "Hey, who the hell? Kankuro, stop!" The voice came from above. A red-haired boy appeared on the ceiling, hanging upside down, arms crossed, his teal eyes ringed with darkness that spoke of insomnia or madness or both. Gaara of the Sand. The Jinchuriki of the One-Tail, Gaara stared at Naruto. Naruto looked up at him. The air between them changed, thickened. Gaara's sand, the ever-present protective barrier that orbited him always, recoiled, pulled back toward its master in a defensive shell, compressing tighter around his body, as if trying to form armor against something only it could sense. Shukaku, inside Gaara's seal, went silent. The ever-present whisper of blood and death that drove its host toward violence choked off like a radio losing signal. The One-Tail had felt what Kurama had felt 7 years ago, and its response was identical. Gaara's eye twitched. "What are you?" Naruto smiled up at him, warm, like terrifying. A friend, perhaps. "If you learn to ask nicely." He walked on. Gaara watched him go. His hand was shaking. His hand never shook. Shikaku's voice was gone for the first time in his entire life, and the silence was so alien that Gaara didn't know whether to be grateful or more frightened than he'd ever been. "That boy," Gaara said to his siblings, "stay away from him." Temari and Kankuro had never seen their brother afraid. They decided very quickly that they would not ask questions. The written exam, room full of Genin, tension thick enough to chew. Ibiki Morino at the front, his scarred face promising pain for cheaters. The exam designed to test intelligence gathering under pressure, to force examinees into the choice of risking everything or giving up. Naruto sat at his desk. He read the exam paper once. Then he picked up his pencil and wrote, continuously, without stopping, without looking up, without pausing on a single question. 4 minutes. Every answer filled in, precise, correct, detailed. He set down his pencil, folded his hands on the desk, and spent the remaining 56 minutes watching the room. Ibiki noticed. He noticed the boy finish in 4 minutes. He noticed the red and black eyes scanning the room with an expression that made Ibiki, a man who specialized in cracking minds, feel like a first-year student being observed by a headmaster. He said nothing. Something in him chose to say nothing. Some deep, quiet instinct that had kept him alive through 2 wars told him, do not draw the attention of the thing in seat 7. The 10th question came. Ibiki gave his speech. Quit now and fail, or stay and risk being a genin forever. Teams began leaving. 1, 3, 5. Naruto remained seated. He hadn't moved, hadn't reacted, hadn't shown a flicker of concern. Because the concept of failure was so far removed from his existence that the threat didn't register as language meant for him. Sasuke stayed because his pride wouldn't let him leave. Sakura stayed because Naruto and Sasuke stayed. Other teams stayed for their own reasons. Ibiki called it. Everyone passed. He peeled off his headband to show his scars, gave his speech about the value of gathered intelligence and the courage of commitment. Standard. Naruto was already standing, adjusting his jacket, ready for whatever came next. Anko Mitarashi crashed through the window, seconds later, banner unfurling, introduction screaming, energy at 1,000. She looked out at the remaining examinees with a grin that promised suffering and fun in equal measure. All right, maggots. The second exam begins now. Training Ground 44, the Forest of Death. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Fufufu. What an inviting name. The Forest of Death, massive, primal, full of things that ate people and wore their skin. Teams were scattered with their scrolls, given 5 days to reach the central tower with both a heaven and earth scroll in their possession. Standard elimination, survival of the most vicious. Team 7 entered the forest and Naruto immediately stopped walking. He's here, Naruto said. Sasuke and Sakura looked at him. Who? Sakura asked. The serpent. Naruto's red eyes scanned the canopy above them, seeing something the others couldn't. His lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. He's been following us since we entered. His disguise is laughable. His chakra signature tastes like rotting ambition. Kakashi wasn't with them. The second exam was Genin only. Sasuke activated his Sharingan, scanning the trees. He saw nothing. I don't. You won't, Naruto said. He's above your detection range. Stay behind me. Both of you. They had 40 seconds before the air changed. Killing intent flooded the forest like poison poured into a well. The kind that didn't just threaten, the kind that showed you your death before it happened. That painted your funeral inside your eyelids and made you attend it while still breathing. Birds fell from trees. Hearts stopped mid-flight. Animals fled in every direction. The very trees seemed to lean away from its source. Sasuke's knees buckled. His eyes went blank. Every vision of Itachi standing over his parents' bodies crashed into him at once. Amplified, distorted, made fresh. Sakura collapsed entirely. She hit the branch face first, gasping, tears streaming, mind flooded with the terror her 12 years of life had no framework to process. Naruto stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Straight, unmoved. The killing intent washed over him like wind over a mountain, present, acknowledged, and completely irrelevant. He looked up at the source. You dare bare your fangs in my presence, serpent? The canopy rustled. A figure dropped from above, long, pale, wrong in the way only something that had worn too many faces could be wrong. Orochimaru of the Sannin, golden snake eyes, purple markings, a tongue that flicked out past inhuman length. My, Orochimaru purred, landing on a branch 20 feet away. What an interesting reaction. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki who doesn't flinch at killing intent meant for Kage. You must be special. Special is a word for children who color inside the lines, Naruto replied. I am something else entirely. Orochimaru's eyes gleamed with that hunger that had defined him for 50 years. The insatiable need to possess, to understand, to dissect everything unique and make it his. The Uchiha boy was my target, but you might be even more interesting. He formed hand signs faster than any human eye could track. The forest floor erupted. A summoning circle blazed, and from it rose a snake the size of a building. A massive, scaled horror with fangs like curved swords and eyes like burning lanterns. Its coils crushing trees as it rose to full height. It lunged at Team 7, mouth open, fangs dripping. An avalanche of muscle and scale. Naruto raised one finger. Absolute end. The beam erupted from his fingertip. Black, dense, wrong. It wasn't light. It was the absence of light given form. A lance of demonic energy that hit the summoned snake dead center and erased it. The scales didn't burn. The flesh didn't tear. The creature simply ceased to exist from the point of contact outward, its body coming apart like a puzzle being disassembled from the center, each piece winking out of reality before it could fall. The snake was there. Then it wasn't. 100-foot summon, gone in less than a second. The beam continued past where the snake had been, cutting through the forest canopy in a straight line for half a mile. Trees in its path disappeared. The sky above was visible through the carved channel, and that sky had turned the wrong color, a bruised purple-black that lasted 10 full seconds before bleeding back to blue. Every team in the Forest of Death looked up. Every proctor on the perimeter tower felt it. Anko's face went white, and she grabbed the railing hard enough to dent metal. "What the hell was that?" she screamed. In the forest, the dust cleared. What little dust there was, because most of the matter in the beam's path had simply stopped existing rather than being destroyed into particles. Orochimaru stood on his branch. Still, his golden eyes were very wide. His smug expression was gone. What replaced it was something the Sannin had never worn in the presence of a child: wariness. "Fascinating," Orochimaru breathed. That was not chakra, not nature energy, not Biju power. His tongue flicked out, tasting the air. What it tasted made him flinch. "What are you, little boy?" "I am the thing that eats things like you," Naruto said. He was already walking forward, each step bringing him closer to Orochimaru with the unhurried confidence of something that has never once needed to rush. "You play at immortality by shedding your skin, jumping from body to body like a parasite with delusions of grandeur." His red eyes locked onto Orochimaru's golden ones. How pathetic. Orochimaru attacked. He was a Sannin. His reflexes were legend. His neck extended impossibly, jaws unhinging, fangs extruding venom that could kill in heartbeats. He shot forward like a striking cobra, going for Naruto's throat. Physical attack nullification. His fangs closed on smoke. Black vapor where a neck should have been. Nothing solid. Nothing to bite. The body dispersed and reformed an inch to the left, completely untouched. And now Naruto's gloved hand was around Orochimaru's extended throat, gripping, holding him in place like a snake being pinned behind the head. "You wanted to mark the Uchiha," Naruto said, lifting Orochimaru off the branch. The Sannin's feet dangled. His hands clawed at Naruto's grip. Fingers that could crush steel couldn't budge the white glove even a millimeter. "To make him your vessel, your next skin." Naruto tilted his head. "Allow me to show you what true possession feels like." Temptation world. Orochimaru's eyes rolled back. What he experienced would haunt him for the rest of his unnatural existence. He was in a void. Black. Endless, without dimension or reference. And in that void was a presence so vast, so old, so fundamentally other that Orochimaru's lifetimes of accumulated knowledge crashed against it and broke like waves on a continent. Every experiment, every body stolen, every forbidden technique mastered, every single thing Orochimaru had accomplished in 50+ years of defying death and nature was weighed, measured, and found to be the academic achievements of a particularly clever insect. The black fire started at his feet. It didn't burn flesh. It burned deeper. It stripped his soul the way sandpaper strips paint. Each layer removed revealed another underneath, and each layer was shown to be hollow, empty. A snake eating its own tail forever and calling it progress, his life's work. Hollow. His ambition, hollow. His immortality. A child's blanket fort against a universe that would erase him eventually regardless. And through it all, the red eyes watched, patient, amused. The way you watch a mouse run a maze it can never solve. 3 seconds passed in the real world. In the temptation world, Orochimaru experienced an eternity compressed into a space smaller than thought. When Naruto released him, when the gloved hand opened and let the Sannin drop, Orochimaru fell. He hit the branch, slid off, hit another branch, barely caught himself with fingers that were shaking so badly they nearly missed the bark. His golden eyes were glassy, unfocused. His mouth moved without sound for several seconds before language returned. "You." Orochimaru's voice was a rasp, a ruin. "What are you?" "I told you," Naruto said from above, straightening his jacket. "The thing that eats things like you." Orochimaru ran. He ripped himself away, tearing off a piece of something in the process, leaving behind a fragment of his soul caught in the temptation world's fading grip like flesh torn on barbed wire. And he ran. Body replacement. Reverse summoning. Every escape technique in his considerable arsenal deployed at once to put distance between himself and the boy in the black suit. He emerged half a mile away, in a hollow tree, curled against the bark, shaking. Shaking in a way he hadn't since he was 5 years old and afraid of the dark. His hand went to his neck. The curse-marked seal he'd prepared for Sasuke, the one that was supposed to be placed today, that was supposed to begin the corruption that would deliver the Sharingan to him, pulsed weakly. He'd never gotten close to Sasuke. He'd never had the chance. Because the thing standing in front of the Uchiha had looked at a Sannin the way a cat looks at a bird with a broken wing, Orochimaru closed his eyes, swallowed, and for the first time in decades, felt the alien, unwelcome, impossible sensation of being afraid. Back in the clearing, Naruto turned to his teammates. Sasuke had recovered from the killing intent. His Sharingan was blazing, his body tense, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Sakura was sitting up, wiping tears, hands still shaking. "The serpent has departed," Naruto said pleasantly. "He will think twice before returning." He paused, looked at Sasuke. "Are you well, Mr. Uchiha?" Sasuke stared at him. His jaw worked, his fists clenched at his sides. Everything he'd spent his life building, every hour of training, every technique mastered, every drop of hate cultivated toward his brother, all of it had just been contextualized in the worst possible way. The power he sought wasn't just far away. It was apparently available to a 12-year-old in a suit who used it the way normal people used a fly swatter. "What are you?" Sasuke asked. The same question everyone asked, but from Sasuke it carried different weight. Because Sasuke had dedicated his existence to the pursuit of power, and the answer to this question might validate or destroy everything he believed about how power worked. Naruto regarded him for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was the closest thing to warm he'd shown appear. "I am your teammate, Mr. Uchiha. For now that is sufficient. For the future?" He turned away, looking toward the central tower visible above the treetops in the distance. "Ask me again when you've earned the answer." Sasuke's eye twitched, but he said nothing else. Because somewhere beneath the frustration and the envy and the competitive rage, a small, honest part of him recognized that Naruto had just saved his life, had stood between him and a monster that would have marked him, corrupted him, consumed him, and hadn't asked for a single thing in return. They reached the tower in 4 hours. The scroll was obtained from a team of Rain Genin who took one look at Naruto's eyes and surrendered their scroll without a fight. He thanked them politely and wished them safe travels. "You just took it?" Sakura asked. They offered. Refusing a gift would be rude, Miss Haruno. They were terrified, and yet alive. One might argue I did them a kindness. Sakura opened her mouth but closed it, opened it again. Then she laughed. Despite everything, despite the forest of death, despite Orochimaru, despite the impossible display of power she'd witnessed, she laughed. Because there was something absurd about it. About him. About the perfect posture and the perfect manners and the casual erasure of S-rank threats. Naruto looked at her with something approaching surprise, then his lips twitched. "Foo. You laugh. Good. Too many people in this exam are treating it like a funeral. It's barely a mild inconvenience." The preliminaries, a smaller arena beneath the tower. The remaining teams gathered, bloodied and tired from 5 days in the forest, except Team 7, who had arrived in 4 hours, and whose most disheveled member was Sakura with slightly wind-messed hair. The matchups were announced. Random selection. Board spinning. Naruto's name appeared opposite a sound genin named Dosu Kinuta. The bandage-wrapped, melody-arm-wearing shinobi who specialized in sound-based attacks that disrupted the inner ear and scrambled the nervous system. Dosu looked at the board, looked at Naruto. Something cold ran down his spine. Animal instinct, the kind that couldn't be trained away, the kind that told prey to run and run now. He ignored it. He was a sound ninja. He followed orders. They took the arena floor. Hayate, the sickly proctor, raised his hand. "Begin." Dosu launched forward. His melody arm was already humming, the amplifier generating frequencies designed to destroy equilibrium and rupture eardrums. He swung, a wide arc aimed at Naruto's head, the sound waves already preceding the physical attack, already reaching for the boy's inner ear to scramble balance and induce vomiting. Naruto raised one hand. Black lightning, a single arc, thin as a wire, black as the space between stars. It leaped from his extended finger and struck Dosu in the chest mid-swing. The sound genin's body seized. Every muscle contracted at once, then released. His legs stopped working. His arms stopped working. His melody arm hit the ground with a metallic crash. His body followed a half-second later, hitting stone face first, sliding to a stop 4 feet from where he'd started. His eyes were open. He was conscious. He couldn't move. His will to fight had been removed like a component pulled from a machine. One exchange, one technique. Match over. The arena was silent. Hayate stared at the fallen body, stared at the boy who hadn't moved from his starting position. His hand raised slowly. "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." Nothing. No cheers, no commentary. The Jonin in the observation balcony were frozen. The foreign intelligence officers were writing furiously. The sound team's remaining members were white-faced. Gaara's sand was trembling around him, pressed tight to his body, defensive without command. Naruto bowed. A formal, elegant bow, one hand across his chest, one behind his back, a slight dip of his golden and black streaked head. Then he walked back to the balcony stairs, past his teammates, and leaned against the railing to watch the remaining fights. That was... Sakura started. Quick, Sasuke finished. His voice was flat, but his Sharingan was spinning, recording, analyzing, and finding nothing to copy. The remaining preliminary fights passed. Naruto watched them all with mild interest. Sasuke won his match, a decisive victory against a Rain Genin using his developing Sharingan and Taijutsu with Fire Ninjutsu. Sakura lost hers, a close fight with Ino Yamanaka that ended in a mutual knockout. Naruto watched Sakura's loss with an expression that might have been disappointment. When she returned to the balcony, bruised and ashamed, he said only, "You fought well for someone still learning what fighting means, Miss Haruno." It wasn't comforting in the traditional sense, but it was honest. And Sakura found that she preferred his honesty to comfort. Gaara's match came. He faced a Genin from Leaf, Rock Lee, the taijutsu specialist with the weights and the sunset speeches and the determination that bordered on mania. Lee fought beautifully. Gate of opening, gate of healing, gate of life. His speed exceeded what most Jonin could track. His strikes cratered the arena floor. Gaara's sand caught everything. And when Lee couldn't move anymore, the sand closed around his leg and arm and crushed. The sound was horrible. Naruto watched this with narrowed eyes. The sand closed. Bones broke. Lee screamed. And something in Naruto's expression shifted. Just for a moment, just a flicker, into something that looked like displeasure. "Wasteful," he murmured. Breaking a warrior that dedicated is pointlessly wasteful. Nobody heard him except Haku, who was hidden in the shadows of the upper balcony. Haku filed the observation away and said nothing. 1 month of training before the final exam. The village buzzed with anticipation. Bets were placed. Nobles arrived. The arena was prepared. Kakashi took Sasuke away for personal training, partly because Sasuke needed it, and partly because Kakashi needed time away from the boy in the black suit who had broken his mind in 4 seconds during the bell test. That memory still haunted his dreams. He woke up some nights with Rin's face behind his eyelids, more vivid than it had been in years, and he knew it was aftershock. He knew the temptation world had left scars on his psyche that no amount of Sharingan could overwrite. Naruto did not train during the month break. Training implied that there was something to improve. Instead, he spent the month doing other things. He walked the village, openly, in his black suit, with his red eyes, through streets where people had spat on him and thrown things at him for years. But things were different now. The whispers had changed. The shopkeepers who'd refused him service now fell silent when he entered, served him immediately, and bowed him out. The children who'd thrown rocks stayed indoors. The adults who'd sneered now found other things to look at. Fear had replaced hatred, and Naruto found this instructive. He visited the third Hokage twice during the month. Both visits were quiet. Tea and conversation. The old man asking how he was feeling, what he was thinking, if he needed anything. Naruto studied Hiruzen during these visits. This old, tired man who had taken the hat again after Minato's death, who had watched the village hate his predecessor's son and been unable to stop it entirely, who had tried, within his limited political power, to keep the boy safe and fed and housed. "You're growing," Hiruzen said once during the second visit. "I can feel it. Whatever you are, you're growing closer to something." Naruto sipped his tea. "Closer to what, Lord Hokage?" "To caring, I think." The old man smiled. "Tired, knowing, fond. You've started to care about things, people, your team, the boy with the ice mirrors, even that brute with the big sword." Naruto set down his cup. He looked at the Hokage for a long time, Locke. Those red and black eyes held something complex. Layers of something that existed in a being too old for its body, processing a truth it didn't entirely want to acknowledge. "Perhaps," Naruto said, "but caring is dangerous, Lord Hokage. It creates vulnerabilities." Hiruzen laughed, soft, warm. The laugh of a grandfather who had seen too much and still chose kindness. "Everything worth having is dangerous, Naruto. That's what makes it worth having. Naruto didn't respond, but he stayed for another cup of tea, and when he left, something in his step was different. Something in his posture had shifted by a degree so small that only someone watching very carefully would have noticed. Haku noticed. From the rooftop above, watching his master leave the Hokage's office, Haku noticed, and he smiled behind his mask, because the master he served was becoming more human one fractional degree at a time, and Haku understood that this was not weakness. This was something else entirely. The finals arrived. The arena was packed, every seat filled. Nobles, kai, shinobi, civilians. Thousands of eyes turned toward the arena floor where the finalists stood in a line. The anticipation was electric. Betting pools had reached astronomical figures. The Kazekage sat beside the Hokage in the observation box, his robes concealing a face that nobody questioned because protocol demanded it. Naruto stood among the finalists in his black suit, immaculate, pressed, his white gloves bright against his dark attire. His red eyes swept the crowd with polite disinterest. The spectators who met his gaze looked away first. Every time. The matches were announced, the bracket drawn. Naruto's first match was against a genin from Sand, Temari. Wind user, fan wielder, confident, capable, and completely unaware of what she was facing. Temari stepped into the arena swinging her fan to life. Wind blades cut the air, visible arcs of compressed atmosphere that could shred flesh from bone. She opened strong, refusing to give ground, filling the arena with a storm of cutting wind. Naruto walked through it. The wind hit him and parted, flowed around him like water around a stone. His suit didn't flutter. His hair didn't move. The cutting edges of the wind blades reached his body and dissolved into nothing on contact, as if his physical form existed in a space where wind simply chose to go elsewhere. He crossed the arena in 8 steps. Temari saw him coming. Her eyes widened. She'd put everything she had into that opening barrage, her best techniques, her fastest combinations. And he'd walk through them like a man walking through light rain without bothering to open an umbrella. She swung the fan directly at him. A point-blank wind scythe, the kind that had cut through trading posts and stone walls. It hit smoke. She was swinging at nothing. Black vapor. He reformed behind her, one hand raised, index finger extended, touching the back of her neck. Check, he said. Temari froze. She could feel it, the fingertip against her spine. The impossible, absolute certainty that if he pushed even slightly harder, something would happen that couldn't be undone. I concede, she said. Her voice didn't shake. She was brave. Naruto respected that. Wise, he replied, and withdrew his finger. You fight well, Miss Temari. Your wind techniques lack refinement, but the instinct behind them is sound. Consider studying application over volume. She stared at him as he walked back to the fighter's box. And something in her face, something beyond the shock and the fear, colored with a heat she absolutely refused to acknowledge in a public arena. What just happened? A civilian in the stands asked his neighbor. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. The matches continued. Sasuke fought. He won, decisively, impressively, using his developed Sharingan and a new technique, the Chidori, that Kakashi had taught him during the month break. The crowd roared. The Uchiha prodigy performing at peak. This was what they'd come to see. Naruto watched from the fighter's box. Adequate, he murmured. Shikamaru forfeited his match. Naruto found this amusing. A man who understands his limits. How refreshing. Then came Gaara. Gaara's match was against Sasuke in the bracket. But before it could begin, things went wrong in exactly the way things always go wrong in Konoha. The signal came at noon. Feathers began drifting down from the sky. A genjutsu, wide area, designed to put the civilian audience to sleep. In the Kaji box, the Kazekage's guards moved. One of them lunged for the third Hokage. The Kazekage himself dropped his robes, revealing Orochimaru underneath, his snake eyes gleaming with restored confidence, his body hosting a fury that had been building for a month. Simultaneously, explosions rocked Konoha's outer walls. Sound ninja poured through breaches like water through cracks. Sand shinobi turned on their leaf allies in coordinated strikes. The village in an instant went from peacetime to war zone, screaming. Everywhere, screaming. Buildings crumbling, jutsu flying, blood on cobblestones. In the arena, Gaara was triggered. His siblings grabbed him, hauling him toward the wall. He was transforming. Sand erupted from his gourd, from the ground, from the air itself, coating him in layers upon layers of bestial armor. One arm became a claw. His face split into something inhuman. One eye normal, one yellow and diamond-shaped. The one tail was waking up. Shinobi panicked. Jonin moved to intercept. Civilians screamed. The careful structure of the exam finals disintegrated into chaos. In the Kage box, Orochimaru had the third Hokage within a barrier. 4 Sound Ninja maintained it, a purple cube of energy that nothing could penetrate from outside. Inside, Orochimaru summoned the first and second Hokage through Edo Tensei. The undead legends rose, bound to his will, and turned their reanimated eyes toward their successor. Hiruzen drew his staff and prepared to die fighting. Naruto watched all of this from the arena floor. He stood still while chaos erupted around him. Sound Ninja engaged Leaf Shinobi within feet of his position. A stray kunai flew toward him and dissolved in black smoke before reaching his shoulder. His red eyes moved. Taking it in, the village burning, the invasion in full force, the fear, the death. He felt something. It was small, a flicker. The kind of feeling that a being as old and as vast as what lived inside Naruto Uzumaki shouldn't have been able to feel anymore. But he felt it. Looking at the barrier where the old man was trapped, looking at Hiruzen, tired, brave, overmatched Hiruzen, preparing to give his life for a village that had failed so many people, including Naruto himself, he felt something like anger. He felt something like loyalty. He felt something like enough. Haku, Naruto said. From the shadows, Haku appeared, mask in place, ready. Clear the arena of invaders. You and Zabuza have authorization to use lethal force. Haku bowed. As you command, master. He vanished. Within seconds, ice mirrors began appearing throughout the arena. Beautiful, lethal geometry that trapped Sound Ninja in crystalline prisons and riddled them with senbons so fast they dropped without knowing what killed them. Zabuza appeared on the arena wall, executioner's blade singing, carving through Sound Jonin with the ease and joy of a man doing what he was born to do. The Leaf Shinobi who witnessed this, who saw the demon of the mist fighting for them, alongside a masked ice user who moved like a ghost, were too confused to question it. In war, you accept help and ask questions later. Naruto walked toward the central arena, toward the towering, growing form of the One Tail. Gaara had lost control completely now. The sand was building, layer upon layer, growing taller, wider, more monstrous. Shukaku was manifesting, the full Biju, a creature the size of a mountain, made of sand and madness, rising above Konoha's walls like a titan emerging from sleep. It roared. The sound shook buildings, cracked windows, rattled teeth. Naruto stopped walking and looked up. Way up. The One Tail's body blocked out the sun, casting a shadow over 3 city blocks. Kukuku. Naruto adjusted his gloves. You're making quite the mess. He floated. No technique announcement. No visible mechanism. He simply left the ground. Rose straight up like a puppet pulled by invisible strings, ascending through the air with his hands clasped behind his back, his jacket flapping gently in wind generated by the beast's movements. He rose until he was at eye level with Shukaku, a 12-year-old boy hovering in the sky beside a tailed beast, looking at it the way you'd look at a very large, very loud, very stupid dog that had knocked over the furniture. Shukaku saw him, its massive head turned, yellow eyes, ancient, mad, gleeful, locked onto the floating figure. Ah! A tiny human flies up to play. Shukaku's voice was a sandstorm-given vocabulary. I'll crush you. I'll bury you. I'll... Shut up, Naruto said. He said it at normal volume, but the words carried power, a pressure behind them that made Shukaku's jaw stop moving mid-sentence. The beast's eyes widened, just for a second, just enough to show that something inside it, something deeper than the madness, deeper than the bloodlust, recognized what was floating in front of it. The same thing Kurama recognized. The same thing that made the most powerful of the tailed beasts curl up and whisper. Wind bullet. Shukaku recovered fast. An instinct beast, it attacked because attacking was all it knew. Its chest expanded, its mouth opened. A sphere of compressed wind the size of a house erupted toward Naruto, spinning, screaming, carrying enough force to level a city block. Naruto raised one palm. Open, facing the incoming apocalypse. Absolute end. The blast left his palm. It was visible this time, a column of black energy that turned the air around it inside out, that made light bend away from it in ribbons, that changed the color of the sky from blue to bruised purple-black in a spreading circle above the village. It hit the wind bullet. The wind bullet ceased. There was no explosion, no collision. The compressed wind simply stopped being wind, stopped being air, stopped being anything at all. The absolute end swallowed it and kept going. A spear of darkness that struck Shukaku in the chest. The impact was biblical in its absence of subtlety. Sand armor, layers thick enough to stop S-rank jutsu, thick enough to tank bijou bombs, hardened by a millennium of hatred and madness, burned away. Layer after layer, stripped like pages torn from a book, each one dissolving into nothing as the black energy ate through it. Shukaku screamed, a sound so massive it cracked the Hokage monument. A sound of pain and disbelief, and something terrifyingly close to the noise Kurama made when it first felt what shared its container. The explosion, or rather the implosion of energy at the point of contact, turned the sky above Konoha black. Solid, starless, absolute black, for 10 full seconds. Every person in the village looked up. Shinobi mid-battle stopped fighting. Sound invaders mid-strike froze. Leaf defenders mid-dodge paused. For 10 seconds the war stopped, because every human being within miles felt something in the sky that their bodies refused to ignore. When the darkness cleared, Shukaku was missing a third of its sand body. The right side of its torso was simply gone. A carved absence, smooth as glass at the edges, as if reality had been scooped out with a spoon. The beast staggered, its remaining arm clawed at the air. Its roar was weaker now, confused, pained. Naruto was already moving. Spatial severance. He cut the distance between himself and Shukaku's head. One moment he was 50 meters away. The next, he was standing on the beast's forehead, his polished shoes touching sand that hissed and recoiled from his presence. He looked down at the sand beneath his feet. Somewhere in there, buried in the beast's skull, was Gaara. Naruto plunged his hand downward, into the sand, past the sand. His arm went in up to the elbow, punching through layers of compressed earth and demonic chakra as if reaching into warm water. His fingers found something solid, something small. A collar, a boy. He pulled. Gaara came out of Shukaku like a cork from a bottle. The red-haired boy was unconscious, his teal eyes rolled back, his body limp. The moment he was extracted, the connection broke. Shukaku's form, already damaged, already destabilized, collapsed, all at once. A mountain of sand losing its cohesion, crumbling inward, falling in an avalanche that poured over Konoha's walls and buried 2 streets in 50 feet of loose earth. Naruto held Gaara by the collar with one hand, hovering 100 feet in the air, looking down at the falling sand with mild irritation at the mess. The weight of an unconscious boy dangling from his grip didn't register as effort. It wouldn't have registered if it were 10 boys. 100. He descended. Slowly. The same effortless float that had carried him up now carried him down, touching ground on a rooftop near the arena. He set Gaara down on the tiles the way you'd set down a dropped glove, gently, without particular urgency, with a kind of absent-minded care that suggested the boy was more fragile than anything he typically handled. Gaara's sand, the automatic defense that always protected him, was gone, depleted, used up in the transformation. The boy was vulnerable for the first time in his life, and Naruto had chosen not to kill him. Interesting choice from a being that had shown little mercy to enemies. But Gaara was not an enemy. Gaara was a weapon pointed by someone else's hand. A monster made by other monsters. And something about that, something about the parallel stayed Naruto's hand. He straightened, looked out across the village. The war was still happening below, diminished. Many of the sound invaders were fleeing now, having seen their centerpiece weapon, the unleashed Bijou, dismantled in 30 seconds by a floating child, but still ongoing. Pockets of fighting. Dying shinobi on both sides. Screaming, fire, the smell of blood. And above, in the barrier, the third Hokage was losing. Naruto could feel it, the old man's chakra flickering, fading, being consumed by the Reaper death seal he'd invoked in desperation, trying to drag Orochimaru's soul with him as his final act. Something clenched in Naruto's chest, something that felt like grief preemptively arriving. The old man was dying. The one person in this village who had ever given him warmth without condition, who had visited him, who had tried. Naruto's red eyes turned toward the barrier. He saw it, the purple cube, the 4 sound ninja maintaining it, and inside, The failing Hokage reaching for Orochimaru with death in his hands. He couldn't get through the barrier in time. The Reaper Death Seal was already active, a divine contract that couldn't be interrupted from outside without destroying both parties. The old man had chosen this, had chosen sacrifice. Naruto stood on the rooftop, his hands unclenched, clenched again. He could not save the old man. The technique was beyond intervention. The Shinigami was already present, already cutting, already claiming, but he could do something else. He could end this. Naruto rose into the air again, high, above the buildings, above the smoke, above the chaos. He stopped when the entire village was visible below him, a tapestry of battle, of fire and blood and ambition gone wrong. Every combatant visible, every conflict laid bare. He raised one hand, demonic fear aura. He released it, full, unrestricted, holding nothing back. A wave of pure, concentrated authority that rolled outward from his position like a shockwave without sound. It passed over the village in a circle, expanding, touching every living being within Konoha's walls. Ninja dropped their weapons, every one of them. Sand, sound, leaf. It didn't matter. Their bodies made the decision before their minds could process it. The same instinct that makes animals fall still when a predator's shadow passes overhead. Legs gave out, knees hit dirt, faces hit stone. Weapons clattered from numb fingers. Jutsu dissolved mid-formation, the chakra behind them scattering like startled birds. The entire battlefield went silent. Hundreds of shinobi, trained warriors, killers, veterans of wars, on their knees, looking up at the boy floating in the sky, backlit by a sun that seemed somehow dimmer than it should be, his black suit sharp against the clouds, his red eyes visible even from the ground. The silence spread. It hit the arena, the streets, the walls, the barrier. Even the sound ninja maintaining it trembled, their concentration cracking, the purple walls flickering. Inside, Orochimaru looked up. His snake eyes found the floating figure, and the fear from the forest of death hit him fresh, twice as strong, seasoned now with the memory of what the temptation world had shown him. The barrier fell. The sound four dropped, overwhelmed by the aura. Their linked chakra broke. The walls dissolved. And inside the fallen barrier, the third Hokage, arms extended, the Shinigami hovering behind him, the Reaper Death Seal halfway complete, stopped. Orochimaru was on his knees. His reanimated Hokage puppets were frozen. Even the dead felt it. Even the undead could not stand under that pressure. The strings of the Edo Tensei strained but held only enough to keep them upright, motionless, useless. Hiruzen looked up, bleeding, dying, old, and he saw Naruto floating above the village, radiating something that had brought a war to its knees. And the old man smiled, pride. Despite everything, despite the pain, despite the death reaching for him, look at you, Hiruzen thought. Look at what you've become. Naruto's voice carried, not shouting, not amplified by any visible technique. It simply carried. Every ear in the village heard it with perfect clarity, as if he were standing beside each person individually, speaking directly into their personal space. I have grown tired of these petty squabbles. His red eyes swept the village, from the invaders to the defenders, from the Kage box to the outer walls, from the bleeding streets to the ash-filled sky. If you wish to survive, you will acknowledge your betters. Silence, total. The kind of silence that isn't the absence of sound, but the presence of something so absolute that sound retreats out of respect. Then Zabuza laughed. From somewhere in the arena, coated in the blood of sound ninja he'd carved through before the aura hit, the demon of the mist looked up at the sky and laughed that scraping rocks laugh of his. Full, unrestrained. The laugh of a man who had sworn loyalty to a monster and was watching that monster prove himself beyond any possible doubt. There it is, Zabuza roared, his voice the only sound in the silence. There's your answer, world. That's what I serve. Naruto looked down at his retainer. One corner of his mouth twitched upward. Below on the streets, reactions rippled through the kneeling masses like waves through still water. Sasuke was on one knee, his Sharingan burning, his hand pressed flat against the cobblestones. His body wouldn't obey him. His legs wouldn't stand. And the part of him that had spent years cultivating rage at Itachi, rage at weakness, rage at the unfairness of his stolen family, found a new shape, a new direction. That power, Sasuke thought, teeth grinding. That's what real power looks like. And he's been sitting next to me in class for months. Sakura was flat on the ground, tears streaming, but she wasn't crying from fear, or rather she was, but mixed with the fear was something else. Something that looked up at the boy in the sky and felt a warmth that had no business existing alongside the terror. He'd saved her. In the forest, on the bridge. Every time danger came, he was there, polite and immovable and absolutely devastatingly present. Naruto, she thought, who are you really? Kakashi was on both knees, his Sharingan uncovered, recording everything. His mind was running calculations that kept breaking. Power scaling that didn't fit any known model. A Genin, a 12-year-old Genin, had just single-handedly stopped a Biju, ended an invasion, and put every shinobi in a mile radius on their knees with nothing but his presence. His report to the Hokage was going to be interesting, assuming the Hokage survived. In the arena, Gaara stirred. Consciousness returned slowly, a swimmer reaching the surface. His teal eyes opened to a sky that was the wrong color and a silence that shouldn't exist during a battle. He sat up on the rooftop where Naruto had placed him. His sand was gone. His armor was gone. He was just a boy, thin, pale, dark-circled, exposed. He looked up and saw the figure in the sky, and for the first time in his life, Shukaku did not whisper in his ear. The silence inside his head was absolute. The one tail was pressed against the farthest corner of the seal, 9 tails curled tight. Wait! That was Kurama. Shukaku had one tail, but the behavior was the same. The posture was the same. The message was the same. Don't attract attention. Don't make noise. Don't let it notice us. Gaara stared at the figure in the sky, and something in his chest, something broken, something lonely, something that had spent 12 years being told it was a monster by everyone it loved, recognized a kinship it hadn't expected. He's like me, Gaara thought. He carries something inside him, something terrible, something feared, but he's not afraid of it. He is it. It was a strange thought to bring peace. But it did. The invasion ended. The sound forces, though still conscious and able to move once Naruto dialed back the aura, fled, scattered into the forest beyond the walls like cockroaches when a light comes on. The sand forces surrendered. Their leadership, what remained of it, would later discover that their Kazekage had been dead for weeks, replaced by Orochimaru, and that their entire invasion had been a puppet show orchestrated by a madman. Orochimaru himself escaped, barely. During the moment the barrier fell and the chaos of the aura subsided enough for motor function to return, the Seinen used every escape technique in his arsenal. Reverse summoning, body replacement, 3 substitution jutsu chained in sequence. He left behind both reanimated Hokage. They crumbled when his control broke, and one of his arms, which the 3rd Hokage's incomplete Reaper Death Seal had claimed before collapsing. One arm, the use of both, actually. The Shinigami's partial claim left both of Orochimaru's arms dead and useless, dangling at his sides like meat attached to a snake that was already slithering for the hills. He ran. For the second time in a month, Orochimaru of the Seinen ran from something in Konoha that made him feel like a child hiding under a blanket from a monster. Except this monster was real, and the blanket wasn't thick enough. The 3rd Hokage lived, barely. The incomplete Reaper Death Seal had cost him, years of life shortened, chakra reserves permanently damaged. His body aged further than nature had already taken it. But he lived, because the barrier had fallen at the critical moment, because the technique had been interrupted before the Shinigami could complete its claim on his soul, because Naruto had ended the war before it could take the old man's life. Hiruzen lay in the hospital bed 2 days later, tubes and monitors attached to a body that was somehow still breathing. Naruto sat beside him in a visitor's chair, legs crossed, white-gloved hands folded in his lap. He had a cup of tea materialize from nowhere. He sipped it and waited. The old man's eyes opened. Cloudy, tired but alive. Naruto. Hiruzen's voice was a thread. You rest, Lord Hokage. Naruto's voice was the softest it had ever been. Still formal, still measured, but softer. The village stands. Your hat remains unclaimed by lesser men. All is well. Hiruzen laughed. It became a cough. He clutched his chest and coughed, and his old eyes watered. You stopped an invasion. By yourself. At 12. I was motivated. The Hokage looked at him. Really looked. Past the red eyes and the black suit and the demonic aura that even now made the medical equipment give slight false readings. He looked at the boy underneath all of it. Thank you, Hiruzen said. Naruto set down his tea. He didn't respond immediately. The silence sat between them, warm rather than uncomfortable, and then, so slightly that it might have been imagined, Naruto inclined his head. A small bow, the kind given between equals who respect each other. "Rest," he said again, and left the room. Outside the hospital, the village was rebuilding, scaffolding on damaged buildings, shinobi running repair missions, civilians sweeping glass and ash from their storefronts. Life returning. Damage changed, but returning. Naruto walked through it, past the people who bowed their heads as he passed. And they all did now, every single one, because whatever they thought of the demon brat before, whatever they remembered about the fox and the hatred and the years of scorn, that was all burned away now, replaced by something larger, something that had floated above their village and stopped a war with a sentence. Some bowed from fear, some from gratitude, some from something in between that they didn't have a name for yet. Naruto accepted all of it with the same polite smile, the same formal nod, the same red eyes and black suit, an unhurried stride of something that had existed long before this village and would exist long after. But something was different. Haku saw it. Walking behind his master at a respectful distance, the ice user saw it in the way Naruto's eyes lingered on the reconstruction, in the way his hand brushed a cracked wall as he passed it, almost idly, almost like he was memorizing its texture, in the way he paused at a street corner and looked at the Hokage monument. 4 faces carved in stone, 4 leaders who gave everything for this place. He was starting to care, slowly, reluctantly. The way a glacier moves, imperceptible moment to moment, undeniable over time. The Black Primordial was finding something worth his devotion. In the shadows, other eyes watched. Danzo, from his underground office, gripped his cane with knuckles gone white. His plans for the village, decades of careful manipulation, of root operations, of positioning himself as the only solution to Konoha's weakness, had just been made irrelevant by a 12-year-old boy who could end wars by standing up. The power Danzo had cultivated, the Sharingan eyes he'd stolen and implanted, the political capital he'd hoarded, all of it was pocket change compared to what Uzumaki Naruto had demonstrated in the sky above the arena. Danzo was smart enough to fear that boy, but he wasn't smart enough to stop wanting to control him. In a hidden base, days of travel from Konoha, Orochimaru sat in darkness. His arms hung dead at his sides. Kabuto was nearby, medical chakra glowing, trying to restore function that would never fully return. "Tell me about the boy," Orochimaru said. His voice was different now, hoarser, diminished. The confidence that had defined him for 5 decades was cracked, and through the cracks something cold leaked in. "Uzumaki Naruto," Kabuto said. "Our intelligence is limited. Get more." Orochimaru's golden eyes reflected nothing. "Whatever he is, whatever that power is, I need to understand it, before he comes for me. You think he will?" Orochimaru said nothing, but his dead arms twitched and his jaw tightened, and the silence was answer enough. In a megakure, in a tower that looked over an endless rain, a man with ringed eyes received a report. Pain, the leader of the Akatsuki, read the intelligence brief from his Konoha spy network with an expression that never changed. A boy, 12 years old, who had stopped a Biju with one attack, who had halted an invasion with his presence alone, who carried the Nine Tails and something else, something the report couldn't identify, something that made the spy's handwriting shaky in the closing paragraphs. Pain set the report down. Behind him, a paper flower shifted, Conan watching, reading his stillness for meaning. "The Nine Tails host has changed," Pain said, "or perhaps was never what we assumed. Does this change the plan?" Pain's ringed eyes stared at the rain. "The plan remains, but the timeline may require adjustment." Below the tower, in a different kind of darkness, a single Sharingan gleamed in shadow. The man behind it had read the same report, had reached a different conclusion. Interesting, thought Uchiha Obito. Very interesting. And in Konoha, in a small apartment that had once been bare and cold and smelling of loneliness, Naruto Uzumaki sat at a table he'd materialized from nothing. A table set with fine china and fresh tea and a small vase of black roses that hadn't existed in this world until he willed them into being. Across from him sat Haku, unmasked, sipping tea and smiling. In the corner, Zabuza leaned against the wall, executioner's blade propped beside him, arms crossed, one eye on the window, one eye on the boy who'd claimed him. So, Zabuza said, what's next? Naruto lifted his cup, inhaled the steam. His red and black eyes caught the evening light coming through the window, and in them was something new, something that hadn't been there a month ago, something that looked, from the right angle, in the right light, like the beginning of belonging. Next, Naruto said, we see who comes. He sipped his tea, and we make them regret it. Kukuku. Somewhere deep in the seal, Kurama curled tighter in its corner, 9 tails wrapped around its body. One enormous eye cracked open, red and slitted, watching the ceiling of its cage, as if expecting something terrible to look back. He's getting stronger, the fox whispered to no one. Every day, every interaction, every person he lets in. A shudder ran through fur the color of sunset. When he finally decides what he wants to protect, God's help whatever stands against him. The laugh faded into the warmth of the room like smoke dissolving upward. Haku set his cup down and looked at Naruto with the kind of certainty that did not require words to sustain itself. Zabuza shifted against the wall, the executioner's blade leaning beside him like an old friend at rest, and his single visible eye moved from the window to the boy at the table. The Sand Kid? Zabuza said. Still on that rooftop? Naruto lifted his cup and watched the steam curl. He's waking up. You want me to? I want you to sleep, Zabuza. You've earned an evening without obligation. Naruto sipped. His red and black eyes moved to the window, where the last purple of dusk was draining from the sky over a village still smelling of smoke and reconstruction. I'll attend to the boy. Haku rose. Shall I accompany you, master? Stay. Finish your tea. Naruto stood and straightened his jacket, a motion so habitual it was almost unconscious, though nothing about this being was unconscious. He pulled on one white glove tighter. This conversation requires only 2 voices. He walked to the window and stepped through it the way someone else would step through a doorway, the frame, the glass, the wall, all parting around his body like reality recognizing it's better and accommodating. Then he was gone into the cooling air, and Haku sat back down, and Zabuza closed his eye. He's changing, Zabuza said. Yes, Haku said. Getting soft? Haku picked up his cup and smiled. Getting warm. Those are different things. Zabuza grunted. It might have been agreement. On the rooftop above the arena, Gaara opened his eyes. The first thing he noticed was the silence. Inside his skull, where Shikaku's voice had lived like sand grinding against glass for every second of every day since his birth, nothing. A void where madness used to scream. His hands went to his temples. His breath came short. For one terrible moment, he thought he was dead, because the absence of that voice was so total, so unfamiliar, that his mind had no framework for living without it. Breathe. Gaara's head snapped to the left. Naruto sat 3 feet away on the rooftop's edge, one leg crossed over the other, a cup of tea in his white-gloved hand. He had not been there a second ago. His black suit caught the last light of the day and gave nothing back. You, Gaara said. His voice was raw, dry from the transformation and the screaming and the hours of unconsciousness. You stopped Shukaku. I stopped the noise. Naruto sipped. What happens in the silence is your business. Gaara sat up. His body ached in places he didn't know bodies could ache. Deep, cellular, the aftermath of having something the size of a mountain rip its way through his skin and then be yanked back. His gourd was gone. His sand was depleted. He was just a boy on a roof, thin-armed and hollow-eyed, and the thing sitting beside him radiated something that made every survival instinct in his body tell him to be very, very still. He did not run. He had spent his entire life running from what lived inside him. He was tired of running. What are you? Gaara asked. Naruto looked at him. Those red and black eyes held no judgment, no pity, something closer to recognition. Does the answer matter, or does the result? Gaara's hands clenched against the rooftop tiles. My whole life, the voice, the killing, the loneliness, everyone told me what I was, a weapon, a monster, a failed experiment. I believed them because the thing inside me agreed. He looked at Naruto. You made it stop. I didn't make it stop. Naruto set down his cup on the rooftop ledge. Shukaku stopped because it recognized what shares this body with me. That recognition is not my doing. It is simply fact. Then what am I supposed to do with the silence? Naruto was quiet for 3 heartbeats. When he spoke, his voice held none of its usual edge. It was flat and clean and true. Whatever you choose, You are not the thing inside you. You are not the label placed on you by fragmented men in offices. You are what you decide to become in the space between what happened to you and what happens next. He picked up his cup again. That space is yours. It has always been yours. The noise simply made it impossible to hear yourself think. Gaara stared at him for a long time. The wind moved through his red hair. Below them, the village was alive with reconstruction, hammers and voices and the scrape of scaffolding being erected. Life continuing in the aftermath of something that should have ended it. You're different from what I expected, Gaara said. Cuckoo. People usually expect a monster. They find something more complicated. I expected someone who would kill me for what I did. What you did was be aimed at a village by men who saw you as ammunition. Naruto stood. His jacket fell perfectly. I do not punish weapons for the direction they're fired. I punish the hand on the trigger. He looked down at Gaara. Go home, Gaara of the Sand. Tell your village what happened here. And when the silence becomes familiar enough to live inside, come back. I make good tea. He stepped off the roof and descended through the air like gravity had been informed of his schedule and adjusted accordingly. Gaara watched him go. He sat on that rooftop for another hour, listening to nothing, and the nothing was so beautiful that by the time he stood to leave, something in his chest had unclenched for the first time in 12 years. He did not cry, but his eyes burned, and he let them. The days that followed moved fast for everyone except Naruto. The Sand Village's formal surrender arrived by hawk 3 days after the invasion. The document was long, apologetic, and carefully worded by diplomats who did not yet know their Kazekage had been dead before the first Sound Ninja crossed Konoha's walls. The Leaf Council received it in a chamber still smelling of fresh plaster where blast damage had been repaired. The debate that followed was, by all accounts, absurd. How do we classify his contribution? Homura asked, adjusting his glasses as if better optics would make the problem clearer. We don't, Koharu replied. There is no classification for a genin ending an invasion. He's not a genin, someone muttered from the back of the room. He's a natural disaster with table manners. The meeting produced no official designation. The minutes were filed under pending, indefinite, and no one signed the cover page because no one wanted their name on a document that attempted to define what Naruto Uzumaki was in bureaucratic terms. Kakashi submitted his report on the 4th day. 6 pages. Terse. Every sentence a contained explosion of restraint from a man whose writing hand wanted to produce a much longer document with much more alarming conclusions. The 3rd Hokage's advisors received it in the hospital room where Hiruzen was recovering. They read it in silence. They looked at each other. They looked at the old man in the bed. Recommendations? Hiruzen asked. He was propped up on pillows, his pipe unlit in his hands because the medical staff had threatened resignation if he smoked indoors again. None that would be actionable against him if he disagreed, one advisor said. Hiruzen closed his eyes and smiled, and his advisors saw something in that smile they did not understand and would not ask about. Underground, in his windowless office, Danzo Shimura read the same intelligence reports. His exposed eye tracked each line. His bandaged arm rested on the desk. The Sharingan eyes beneath the wrapping pulsed with stolen light. Each one a tool, each one a contingency, each one a step toward the chair he'd been building toward for 4 decades. His hand was white on his cane. His jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. 4 root operatives, his best, gone in 30 seconds. That had been months ago. Since then, the boy had defeated a Sanin, recruited an A-rank missing nin, dismantled a Biju, and ended a full-scale invasion by standing in the sky and deciding it was over. Danzo was not stupid enough to send another team, but he was angry enough to accelerate. The Hokage was weakened. The council was frightened and confused. The village needed strength, needed direction, needed a hand firm enough to hold it together against whatever came next. His hand, his direction, his chair. The pieces were already in motion. They had been for years. All that had changed was the timeline. Danzo began writing orders. His pen moved fast. His handwriting was precise and small and left no room for interpretation. On the 6th day, Sasuke came to the apartment. Naruto was at his table. Tea, book, the room smelling of something floral that had no origin in any shop in Konoha, conjured, materialized, a luxury pulled from nowhere because Naruto found unscented rooms aesthetically vacant. Haku was in the corner working through a scroll of water jutsu theory. Zabuza was absent, running the perimeter patrol Naruto had assigned him, carving through the scattered remnants of sound operatives still hiding in the forest outside the walls. Sasuke stood in the doorway. He did not enter. His arms were crossed. His Sharingan was active, both eyes spinning, recording, unable to stop themselves in Naruto's presence. Something about the ambient energy in this room made his dojutsu engage involuntarily, as if the eyes themselves recognized a superior force and needed to document it. "What do you want from this village?" Sasuke asked. Naruto looked up from his book. Those red and black eyes met Sasuke's red and black Sharingan, and for a moment the color matched, and the difference between them was purely a matter of scale. "What does the village want from me?" Naruto replied. Sasuke's jaw tightened. "That's not an answer. It is the only honest one." Naruto turned a page. "People ask what I want as if my answer determines their safety. What they mean is, are you a threat? What I mean is, I have been here 12 years. I have not once taken anything that was not given freely. And yet you are the first person from this village to stand in my doorway and ask." He looked up again. "So I return the question. What does this village want from me? Because what it has gotten, without asking, is survival." Sasuke said nothing for a long time. The Sharingan spun. Something behind his expression shifted, a plate of armor adjusting, not coming off but loosening by a degree. "Train with me," Sasuke said. Naruto blinked. It was the closest thing to surprise he'd shown in weeks. "Fufufu, a request. How novel. You're the strongest thing I've ever seen. I need to get stronger. You're my teammate." Sasuke's arms uncrossed, his hands hung at his sides, open. It was not submission. It was an offering. "Train with me." Naruto studied him. 3 seconds. 5. Then, tomorrow, sunrise, training ground 3. Bring your Chidori and your ego. I'll address the deficiencies in both. Something passed across Sasuke's face that could have been a smile if it hadn't been filed down by years of practice severity. He turned without another word and was gone. Haku looked up from his scroll. "He's proud." "Yes. He reminds me of Zabuza before." Naruto lifted his cup. "Everyone reminds you of Zabuza, Haku." Haku smiled. "Perhaps, but the resemblance is real. A man driven by something sharp enough to cut him from the inside. Looking for something to swing at that will make the cutting stop." Naruto said nothing. He drank his tea. Outside, the village was dark with early evening, and somewhere in it, Sasuke Uchiha was walking home with something new in his stride. 3 weeks passed. Konoha rebuilt. Naruto trained Sasuke at dawn, which consisted primarily of Naruto standing immobile while Sasuke threw everything he had and learned, through exhaustion and failure, where the weaknesses in his techniques lived. He never landed a hit. He was never going to land a hit. But the attempt and the corrections Naruto offered in his measured, too smooth voice remade Sasuke's fighting style from its foundations upward. Sakura joined on the 9th day, uninvited, unannounced, appearing at Training Ground 3 at sunrise with her medical techs and her taped fists and an expression that dared anyone to send her away. Nobody did. Naruto looked at her, and something in his expression registered approval in the smallest possible increment. "Miss Haruno, if you're here, you work. I do not tolerate observers." She worked. She bled for it. And each morning she left stronger than she arrived. And each morning Naruto said one sentence that made everything she'd done that day click into place, like the last piece of something she'd been assembling without knowing its shape. It was on the 21st night that the visitors came. Naruto felt them cross the village boundary at 11:30. He was at his window, looking at the moon, a cup cooling in his hand. His red eyes shifted, focused. His head tilted slightly to the left. Itachi Uchiha's soul burned like a match in a dark room. Specific, distinct, angled in a way nothing natural produced. Guilt and love and duty twisted together into something that gave off light only visible to something like Naruto. Beside that match, another presence, vast, wet, hungry. Kasame Hoshigaki, the monster of the mist. His chakra reserves were massive enough to register as a geographical feature. Naruto set down his cup. "Master?" Haku appeared from the shadow by the bookcase. He'd been there for hours, reading, but his body was combat-ready in the space between heartbeats. Stay. Naruto pulled on his gloves, left then right. The motion was ritual. This requires only me. He stepped through the window and rose into the night air. He found them on a rooftop in the Eastern District. They were standing in the shadow of a water tower, their black cloaks with red clouds catching the moonlight in a way that would have been beautiful if the wearers weren't instruments of an organization designed to unmake the world's power structure. Naruto appeared 6 feet from them. He did not announce himself. He was simply there, hands clasped behind his back, red eyes catching the dark and reflecting nothing. Itachi moved first. The Manjikyo Sharingan bloomed in both eyes, three-pointed wheels spinning into their ultimate configuration. He did not test. He did not probe. He did not exchange words. His right eye locked onto Naruto's face and unleashed the crown technique of the Uchiha bloodline without preamble, because Itachi was smart enough to know that hesitation against this target was surrender, wearing a different coat. Tsukuyomi. The world shifted. Black, red, the inverted sky of the illusory dimension. Cross and moon in 72 hours compressed into a single second of absolute control over the victim's perception of reality. The genjutsu that had broken men, shattered minds, reduced Anbu veterans to permanent residents of padded rooms. It found Naruto's mind. It entered. It looked for architecture, the mental framework, the sense of self, the organized structure of personality and memory that genjutsu required as a surface to grip. There was nothing to grip. The Tsukuyomi reached into Naruto and fell, endlessly, without purchase. The way you'd reach into a well expecting to touch bottom and find that the well went down forever, past bedrock, past earth, past any concept of depth that the reaching hand was built to comprehend. The genjutsu collapsed. Naruto blinked. He was still on the rooftop, still standing with his hands behind his back. The wind moved through his hair. Itachi's Sharingan was still spinning, still active, still pointed directly at his face. Nothing had happened. Kukuku. Naruto tilted his head. Was that meant to accomplish something? Itachi's eyes widened by a fraction, the maximum deviation his control allowed. His greatest weapon had found its target and slid off like rain from oil-treated leather. The Sharingan could read movements, copy techniques, predict trajectories. Looking at Naruto gave it nothing. There was no chakra pathway to analyze. There were no tenketsu to map. There was only presence, and that presence did not conform to any system the dojutsu was designed to interpret. Kisame grinned, shark teeth in moonlight. His hand went to Samahata and the massive, bandaged blade came off his back with a practiced swing. My turn, partner. If your eyes can't touch him, maybe mine can feed off whatever he's... Naruto opened the demonic fear aura. Partial, controlled. A tenth of its capacity, aimed like a spotlight rather than released as a flood. It hit both of them simultaneously. Kasame's legs buckled, his massive frame going to one knee before his mind could countermand his body's response. Samahata vibrated against his back, the bandages drawing tight, the living weapon pressing itself flat against its master as if trying to hide behind something solid. Itachi stayed standing, his knees bent but held. Years of self-discipline kept him upright through the wave of something that pressed against every instinct he possessed and told them all the same thing. Leave. I do not fight, Naruto said. His voice was conversational, pleasant, the way someone discusses weather while the world ends behind them. I conclude. Kasame forced himself upright. His pride, the tailless-tailed beast's pride, would not allow kneeling before a child, regardless of what his body demanded. He ripped Samahata from his back, the bandages shredding free, the scaled surface of the living weapon exposed and hungry. He swung. The blade's edge touched Naruto's extended arm. Samahata latched on. Its scales reversed, opening like 1,000 tiny mouths, beginning the process it had performed 10,000 times. Drinking chakra, eating energy, devouring everything it touched to fuel its wielder. It bit into the ambient force surrounding Naruto and began to drain. What it found was not chakra. The sound Samahata made was something between a scream and a gag. A living thing that had consumed the energy of 1,000 shinobi that had eaten Biju-level chakra without hesitation, recoiling from what filled its mouth. The scales slammed shut. The entire weapon convulsed, a seizure running through its biological structure, every scale clamping down in a protective reflex as the thing it had just tasted burned through its sensory apparatus. The sword pulled itself back, forcibly, tearing free of Kasame's grip with a strength that sent the massive swordsman staggering. And the weapon hit the rooftop 3 feet away, rolling, bandages reflexively wrapping around it in a cocoon, the entire entity playing dead. Naruto looked at the cowering blade. One eyebrow rose. Your weapon has better instincts than you do. Kasame stared at his empty hands, at his sword, which had never, in decades of use, in wars, in battles against Jinchuriki and Kage alike, refused to feed. He looked at Naruto with something raw and simple and honest in his expression, fear without comprehension. Naruto stepped toward the sword. He reached down and took the handle. The bandages recoiled from his fingers, pulling away, leaving the handle bare, and he gripped it with thumb and forefinger of his right hand. He squeezed. The handle snapped. The sound was wrong, too clean, too final, like a spine breaking at the point of absolute decision. Samahada's internal structure cracked from the point of pressure outward, a fracture running the length of the weapon, and the legendary blade fell in 2 halves on either side of his fingers. The pieces hit the rooftop tiles and did not move again. Kasame looked at the remains of his partner, his weapon of 20 years, broken between 2 fingers the way a man breaks a twig found on a path. Oh, Kasame said. It was the smallest word he'd ever produced. Naruto released the weapon fragments and turned to Itachi. He walked forward. Each step was unhurried. Each step brought those red and black eyes closer to the Sharingan that could not read them. Itachi did not retreat. Because Itachi Uchiha was many things, but he was not the kind of man who retreated when retreat would only prolong something inevitable. Naruto's white-gloved hand rose. He pressed his palm flat against Itachi's chest, over the heart, which beat too fast beneath the cloak's fabric, betraying the effort of appearing calm. And he pushed, gently. The way you push open a door you already know is unlocked. Soul snatch, partial, not extraction, examination. He reached past the flesh, past the bones, past the chakra system that was eating itself from the inside. He could feel the disease now, coiled in Itachi's lungs like a second inhabitant, more patient than any Biju, and he gripped what lived at the center of Itachi Uchiha's existence. 4 seconds. His eyes moved behind closed lids, reading what he held the way a scholar reads a page of dense text. The Uchiha Massacre, Danzo's ultimatum, the meeting in the dark where a 13-year-old was told, kill them all or watch them all die anyway, and at least this way your brother lives. The choice, the execution, Sasuke's face, the lie that required Itachi to become the monster his brother needed to surpass. Every piece of a broken architecture laid bare. He released. Itachi staggered, caught himself. Blood at the corner of his mouth, not from Naruto's touch, from the disease, from the cough that the examination's brief internal disruption had triggered. He wiped it with the back of his hand and looked at Naruto with eyes that held nothing hidden. You could not hide from something that had already read your entire story. Your plan is broken, Naruto said. He turned and walked 3 steps toward the rooftop's edge. Then, over his shoulder, you intended for Sasuke to kill you, for the truth to surface afterward through the man in the orange mask, for your brother's hatred to become his strength and your death to become his freedom. He looked at the moon. The man in the mask has his own purposes. Your brother's hatred is already changing direction, and you are dying too fast for the timeline you built. Itachi said nothing. His Sharingan deactivated. The red faded to black, and what remained was a young man, 21, exhausted, sick, carrying a weight that had been breaking his spine for 8 years. Tell Sasuke yourself, Naruto said, or I will. My version will have less nuance. Why does this matter to you? Itachi's voice was a thread pulled tight. Naruto was quiet, 3 seconds, an eternity from a being who spoke without pause. Because Sasuke Uchiha is my teammate, and I do not leave things in my orbit broken when I can prevent it. He turned fully. The moonlight caught his face, and something in it, a temperature shift, small enough to miss, warm enough to mean something, was directed at Itachi without reservation. Fufu. Also, your plan was sentimental. I find sentimentality mildly interesting. He looked at Kasame, who was still standing beside the halves of his destroyed weapon, with an expression that suggested his entire career had just been reclassified as preliminary. Tell your organization that the Nine Tails is inaccessible, and tell them that sending a second team would be. He paused, adjusted his glove, conclusive. He stepped off the rooftop and fell into the dark below, and by the time his feet would have hit the ground, he was simply elsewhere. Kasame let out a breath he'd been holding for 90 seconds. His hands were shaking. His hands had never shaken. He looked at Itachi. "So," the swordsman said, "we're not doing this. We're not doing this," Itachi confirmed. His voice was distant. His eyes were on the spot where Naruto had stood, as if the air still held an imprint of what had occupied it. They left Konoha before dawn. Sasuke found out the next morning. Kakashi told him, which was Kakashi's mistake, because there was no good way to deliver the information that Itachi Uchiha had been inside the village walls overnight and had been driven off by a 12-year-old without combat. Sasuke's response was exactly what everyone feared and nobody could prevent. Fury, the kind that burned cold, the kind that locked the jaw and whitened the knuckles and sent every Sharingan Tomoe spinning fast enough to hurt. "He was here," Sasuke said, "and nobody told me. Naruto handled it. Naruto handles everything." Sasuke's voice was a blade drawn across stone. "That's not the point. The point is your brother left with a message, not a fight, which means I know what it means." Sasuke turned and left the room. His feet carried him toward Naruto's apartment without conscious decision, pulled by something that had no name but felt like gravity given a direction. What happened next happened because Naruto had already made it happen. Itachi met Sasuke on Training Ground 3 at midnight. How he got back into the village without detection was irrelevant. Itachi Uchiha had been infiltrating guarded positions since he was 11, and whatever wards Konoha maintained, they were designed to stop shinobi. Itachi was, in the ways that mattered now, something more specific. Sasuke arrived because Naruto had told him to be there. Midnight. Training Ground 3. Do not bring your weapons. Bring your questions. That was all. Sasuke had stormed out of the apartment furious about the instruction and arrived at the training ground precisely on time because whatever else was true, Naruto had never given him incorrect direction. The brothers faced each other across the dark grass. Moonlight and old grief and 8 years of separation compressed into the space between them. What happened in that conversation, the full substance of it, belonged to them alone. The words that broke Sasuke's framework apart were spoken in a voice that shook, because Itachi was many things but invulnerable to his brother's presence had never been one of them. The truth came out in pieces. Danzo, the council, the orders, the choice that was made when there were only horrible options, and a 13-year-old was asked to select his particular horror. Sasuke's knees hit the grass. His fists hit the grass. The sound he made was not a scream. It was something worse, a compression of sound, a noise the body makes when 8 years of architectural hatred discovers it was built on someone else's foundation and every wall comes down at once. He tried to hold the fury, but the fury had nowhere clean to live anymore. The man he'd spent his life preparing to kill was the man who'd spent 8 years dying to protect him, and there was nowhere inside Sasuke's chest that could contain both truths simultaneously without something cracking. Itachi knelt beside him, put his hand on the back of Sasuke's head, said his name, just his name, and the weight of everything that name carried in Itachi's voice was the thing that broke the last wall. They stayed on that training ground until dawn. When Sasuke came to Naruto's apartment the next morning, he did not stand in the doorway. He took one step inside. His eyes were red from something other than the Sharingan. His voice was steady by the barest margin of will. Danzo gave the order. Naruto was at his table. Tea, morning light. He sipped and set the cup down. Yes! Sasuke's hands were fists at his sides. I want him. Naruto's red and black eyes held Sasuke's for a moment. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement, a weighing, a decision made and stored. Take a number, Naruto said. The Sound 4 hit Konoha's outer district 3 nights later. They came at 2 in the morning, the hour where guard rotations thinned and response time stretched. Sakon and Ukon through the eastern wall, their merged bodies phasing through the barrier in a technique that bypassed solid matter. Kidomaru from above, golden threads already deploying from the rooftops like a web being cast over the district. Jirobo through the ground itself, emerging from the earth in the middle of a residential street, his cursed seal already active, the transformation giving his body the mass of something geological. Tayuya from the northwest, her flute already at her lips, the first notes of her summoning melody hitting the air before anyone was awake enough to register a threat. The explosion that announced Jirobo's arrival leveled an apartment complex at its foundation. 3 buildings came down in sequence, each one's collapse triggering the next, a domino chain of structural failure that sent civilians screaming into streets full of debris and fire. More explosions. Kidomaru's explosive tags woven into the webbing, detonating as Konoha shinobi hit the trigger lines. Sound ninja emerging from prepared positions, 40 of them, a strike team, enough bodies to occupy the defensive line while the 4 did their real work. The real work was chaos. Pull attention outward. Create noise, create mess, create the window Kabuto needed to slip through the cracks and make contact with the Uchiha survivor. Zabuza was on patrol when the first building fell. He was across the district in 4 seconds flat. The executioner's blade singing off his back and into his hands mid-sprint, the mist rolling off his body like a personal atmosphere. He hit the first cluster of sound ninja before they registered his presence. The blade came through 3 bodies in a single arc, bisecting torsos with the ease of a thing built specifically for this purpose. Blood on the cobblestones, sound ninja turning toward the threat, finding the demon of the mist standing in the street with his bandaged face split by a grin that was all teeth and no mercy. Finally, Zabuza said, and went to work. Haku appeared on the rooftops above, ice mirrors crystallizing in the air like beautiful death made tangible. Sound ninja who ran for the alleys found the exits blocked by walls of perfect ice. And within those crystalline traps, Senbon came from every direction simultaneously. Haku moving between mirrors faster than the eye could follow, each needle finding the gap between armor plates, the joint between helmet and throat, the exact spot where precision met lethality. Together, they carved through the support forces with a speed that made Konoha's own response teams stop and watch. Leaf Shinobi, who had spent weeks hearing rumors about the Demon of the Mist fighting for their village, now saw it firsthand and had absolutely no idea what to do with the information. But the Sound Four were a different magnitude. Jirobo caught 3 Leaf Chunin and crushed them. Kidomaru's webbing trapped an ambu squad in golden threads that resisted every cutting technique deployed against them. Sakon and Ukon merged into an opponent and began the cellular destruction from within. Tayuya's Doki, 3 summoned specters of pure malice, rose from the ground and began tearing through the defensive line with strength that bordered on Biju scale. Zabuza engaged Jirobo directly. The executioner's blade met the transformed sound ninja's fist, and the impact cratered the street beneath them both. They traded blows, Zabuza's speed against Jirobo's mass, the blade finding flesh and Jirobo's stolen chakra healing the wounds before they could bleed. A stalemate measured in seconds rather than minutes, but a stalemate nonetheless. Haku intercepted Kidomaru's golden arrow with an ice wall. The shaft hit the frozen surface and punched through 3 inches before stopping, the force of it cracking the mirror from corner to corner. He reformed on the adjacent building and launched his counterattack, but the spider user was already retreating to his web, pulling strings that would reshape the battlefield in his favor. They were buying time. They knew they were buying time. They were the best non-Naruto combatants in this village, and they were buying time against 4 elite fighters who had been engineered for exactly this kind of disruption. On a rooftop above the chaos, Naruto stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His red and black eyes swept the district below. The fire, the falling buildings, the scattered fights playing out across 6 city blocks. He watched it the way a man watches a mess someone else made in his house. The kind of patience that looks like stillness, but is actually a countdown. Haku appeared beside him, one arm bleeding from a golden thread that had caught him during a mirror transition. Master? Naruto looked at the blood on Haku's sleeve. Something in his expression went very flat. 3 minutes was already more than this required. He stepped off the roof. Sakon and Ukon found him first. They were mid-engagement with the Leaf Jonin, the cellular merge technique halfway through its host's body. One twin's face emerging from the Jonin's shoulder while the other struck from outside. They sensed him before they saw him. Something in the air thickened. The Jonin collapsed, released, the twins pulling free of his body as every instinct in their shared nervous system screamed a single word at maximum volume. They turned. Naruto was there, 10 feet away, his black suit and white gloves catching the firelight from a burning building to his left. His expression was the expression of a man who has found an insect in his tea. "You," Sakon breathed, "the target. We were told. You were told nothing useful." Naruto looked at them, at the merge technique still active across their shared body. 2 faces, 4 arms, a physiological obscenity that allowed them to invade other bodies at the cellular level. How unrefined, living inside others like a parasite. Does it never occur to your kind that the body you're invading might object? They attacked because they had nothing else. Both twins merged fully, pushing every curse seal to maximum output. Stage 2 transformation flooding their combined body with power that tripled their mass and quadrupled their strength. They charged as one being, forearms swinging, the ground cracking under their feet. Naruto raised one finger. His index, pointed. Gravity collapsed. Space folded. The air between his finger and their charging bodies compressed to a point of absolute density. Not a beam, not a projectile, but a condition applied to the space they occupied. The twins hit the threshold of the collapse and their bodies stopped. Forward momentum became something else. Direction inverted. Their combined mass, 2 human bodies merged and amplified by cursed energy, began to compress inward. The sound was reality objecting. A noise like metal being crushed in a vice the size of the world. A tearing of air as the space between atoms shortened and shortened and shortened. Sakon's face and Ukon's face both opened their mouths, but the air for screaming was being compressed along with everything else. Their body folded inward from the extremities, arms first, then legs, then torso, a collapse that took 3 seconds and produced a final shape the size of a clenched fist. It hit the ground, dense enough to crack the cobblestones beneath it. Then it cracked itself, unable to hold the contradictions of compressed matter, and came apart in a spray of dust that was nothing recognizable. The Leaf Jonin they'd been merged with stared at the empty space, at the crack in the ground, at the boy in the black suit who had just compressed 2 human bodies into a marble and let physics handle the rest. Naruto was already walking. His eyes were on the rooftops where golden threads glittered in the firelight. Kidomaru was there, the 6-armed spider user, perched on a web of his own making, his golden armor gleaming, a bow in 2 of his hands with an arrow already drawn. The golden arrow. A projectile made of hardened spider silk, sharpened to a molecular point, capable of piercing any defense. Kidomaru drew it back. His eyes, all 6 of them, focused on the approaching figure. He released a point-blank range. The arrow crossed the distance in less time than a heartbeat could complete. Naruto caught it, between thumb and forefinger, the shaft vibrating in his grip, the point an inch from his chest, caught with the same absent ease you'd pluck a thrown flower from the air at a parade. He looked at the arrow, examined it, ran his gloved thumb along the shaft, feeling the texture of compressed silk. Interesting material, poor execution. He looked up at Kidomaru. The spider user's face had gone through several stages of emotion and settled on blank, animal terror. "The thread is still connected to your hands, yes?" Kidomaru tried to release the golden line. His fingers wouldn't let go. The silk, his creation, his weapon, was locked to his skin by something that had overridden his own control of the material. Naruto touched the arrow with his other hand. His index finger pressed against the shaft, and black lightning arced from the point of contact, running along the golden thread, following it like a current through a wire, racing up the silk toward Kidomaru's hands faster than the spider user could process what was happening. Black lightning. The arc reached Kidomaru's fingers. It did not stop there. It ran through the thread connections to every strand in his web, every line he deployed across the rooftops, every piece of golden silk in the district. The entire web, 20 buildings wide, hundreds of individual threads, lit up black. The color was wrong. The light was wrong. And Kidomaru, at the center of his own creation, connected to every strand by the chakra that produced them, received the full current of all of it simultaneously. He was gone before his body hit the rooftop. The cursed seal's energy offered no protection. His 6 arms, his golden armor, his engineered physiology, all of it fell from the web like a puppet whose strings had been cut by something so fast. The operator didn't notice until the body was already in free fall. He hit the tiles. He did not rise. Naruto let the arrow fall from his fingers and turned toward the sound of earth being torn open at the far end of the street. Jirobo had disengaged from Zabuza, the transformed sound ninja, massive now. His cursed seal at full deployment, skin darkened and body swollen to twice its normal size, was ripping slabs of earth from the ground and hurling them at buildings. Mindless destruction. Panic given mass and direction. He'd felt Sakon and Ukon disappear, felt Kidomaru's chakra signature vanish. He knew what was coming, and his response was to break everything within reach before it arrived. Naruto appeared in front of him. Jirobo's fist came down, a blow that had shattered fortified walls, that had broken Zabuza's guard 3 times in their engagement, that carried the force of a small earthquake in its descent. Naruto didn't move. The fist hit him, hit his shoulder, hit something that was not flesh in any sense the physical world recognized, and stopped. The impact rippled outward, the ground cratering around his feet, the buildings on either side shuddering. But the boy in the black suit remained standing, as if the blow had been applied to something else entirely. Jirobo's hand was still pressed against Naruto's shoulder. His arm was shaking from the reverberation of absolute arrest. Naruto looked up at him, red and black eyes meeting the maddened gaze of a transformed monster 3 times his height. My, was that your best? He placed his hand against Jirobo's stomach, the white glove pressed flat against the darkened skin. Soul snatch. Full extraction. The soul of Jirobo left his body in a shimmer. Not light, exactly, but something that occupied the same visual space as light without being light. It pulled free of the flesh in a single motion, and what came out was small and thin and had a shape that did not match the massive body it had inhabited. The soul offered no resistance. It simply came when called, the way water comes when a dam is opened. Jirobo's body remained standing for 2 full seconds. Eyes open, mouth open. No expression, because expression required something behind it, and what had been behind it was now gone. Then the legs gave out and the body fell forward, and it hit the ground with the sound of empty mass meeting stone. And that was all that remained of the thing that had torn buildings apart seconds ago. A shell. Open eyes. No breath. Zabuza appeared at the end of the street, blade on his shoulder, watching. His scarred face held something between satisfaction and the specific thrill of serving something that could do this. He said nothing. He didn't need to. Naruto straightened his glove and turned. 1 left. Tayuya's doki filled the northern intersection. 3 summoned specters the size of houses, their faceless heads turning toward whatever moved below them, their massive arms sweeping through buildings, the way hands sweep through sandcastles. She was on a rooftop behind them, flute to her lips, melody driving them forward. Her cursed seal was at stage 2. Her skin was darkened. Her confidence was the last thing intact. She saw Naruto coming down the street. She saw what was behind him, 3 empty spaces where her teammates had been. Her fingers found the notes that would direct all 3 doki at a single target. She played. The 3 specters turned. 3 pairs of massive empty limbs raised. 3 beings of pure summoned malice oriented on the boy walking toward them with his hands behind his back. Naruto looked at them, at the things that were supposed to be demonic. Temptation World. He didn't direct it at Tayuya. He directed it at the doki themselves. The technique reached outward from his body, a field, an emanation, something that touched everything within its radius and offered them the full, unfiltered truth of what they existed alongside. The black fire found the summoned entities and wrapped around them the way a river wraps around stones, covering, consuming, entering through surfaces that should have been impervious because they were demonic in nature. And the temptation world found demonic things to be barely interesting snacks rather than obstacles. The doki burned from the outside inward. Their massive bodies ignited with flame so dark it made the surrounding fire from the damaged buildings look like daylight. They didn't scream because they had no voices. They simply ceased in progressive waves, the extremities first, then the cores, consumed by something that found their particular brand of malice to be a light appetizer. Tayuya watched her demons die. She watched the things she'd spent years learning to control, the weapons that had made her valuable, the source of every victory she'd ever claimed, eaten alive by something that came from the boy walking toward her. The flute dropped from her lips. Her hands fell to her sides. Her cursed seal retreated without command, her body making the decision her mind was too frozen to make. Naruto reached the base of her building. He looked up at her. She looked down. "Your instruments are broken," he said. "Your demons are consumed. Your team is gone." He tilted his head. "What remains of you is a girl with a talent for music and nowhere to point it." She stared at him. Tears she would have died before shedding in front of anyone ran down her transformed face. "Kill me. I find graves tedious. I prefer ash." He turned, took 3 steps away, then, without looking back, "But I won't give you either tonight. Live with what you've seen. Decide if it changes what you are." He left her there, on a rooftop, alone with the silence where her power used to live. And the sound kunoichi sat down on the tiles and looked at her hands and saw nothing in them she recognized. From a rooftop 2 blocks east, Zabuza watched Naruto leave the girl alive. He blinked, then he grinned, the scraping rocks grin that showed too many teeth. "Soft," he said to himself, but his voice was warm when he said it. Haku landed beside him, arm bandaged, ice mirrors dissolving behind him. "He's choosing." "Yeah." Zabuza shouldered his blade, getting real specific about who he kills and who he doesn't. He looked at the distant figure in the black suit, walking through the damaged district without hurry. That's more dangerous than killing everyone. Means he's thinking about it. A shadow moved in the alley below. Fast, purposeful, not sound. This was something else. Silver hair, glasses catching moonlight. Kabuto, Naruto's hand shot out. He didn't turn around. His arm extended to the side, and his white-gloved fingers closed on the collar of a man who had been 15 feet away in a different alley, moving at shinobi speed. Space had been irrelevant to the grabbing. Kabuto was lifted off the ground by his own collar, feet dangling, his face expressing the specific horror of someone who had just attempted to be invisible near something that defined visibility. Naruto turned his head, looked at Kabuto. The medic nin hung in his grip like a held cat, his composure shattered by the sheer impossibility of having been caught. "Tell him," Naruto said, his voice carrying the same pleasant, measured tone it always carried, "that if he sends another instrument to this village, I will return it in the condition I see fit." He set Kabuto down on his feet, gently. The gentleness was worse than violence would have been. "And tell him I said, how unrefined." He released the collar. Kabuto staggered, caught his balance, adjusted his glasses with a hand that trembled so badly the lenses nearly fell from his face. He ran. Naruto watched him go. Then he looked up at the rooftop where Sasuke stood. The Uchiha was outlined against the fire-lit sky, his Sharingan blazing, staring at the crack in the ground where Sakon and Ukon had been compressed into a point and unmade. Their eyes met across the distance. Sasuke's face held understanding. Full, unfiltered, uncomfortable understanding of what stood between him and everything Orochimaru wanted to offer. Everything anyone wanted to offer. There was nothing to surpass here. You did not surpass weather. You did not surpass gravity. You made your peace with it, or you destroyed yourself against it. And Sasuke Uchiha, for the first time in his life, looked at that truth and chose to make his peace. He did not look away first. But when Naruto inclined his head, a small nod, acknowledgement, something that lived in the space between equals, even though they were not equals and might never be, Sasuke returned it. One nod. Then he turned and went home to decide what strength meant now that its ceiling had been removed. Naruto found Itachi 30 miles outside Konoha. The safe house was unremarkable, a cave system in the hillside, disguised with earth jutsu, invisible to any sensor below S rank. Naruto walked to its entrance, materialized a chair, and sat on the roof above the cave's mouth to wait. He didn't wait long. Itachi emerged within minutes. His body knew before his mind did that something had changed in his proximity. He stepped into the moonlight with both Sharingan active, kunai in hand, body already running through the engagement protocols that decades of training had made reflexive. Naruto sipped tea from a cup that had not existed a second ago. Again? Itachi froze. Recognition hit. His hand lowered. The Sharingan spun but did not attack. He stood in the cave entrance, looking up at the boy on the roof with an expression that managed to convey exhaustion without moving a single muscle. "I did what you asked," Itachi said. "Good." Naruto set the cup down on nothing. It floated at his elbow, suspended, because furniture was optional for someone who could tell physics where to sit. How did he take it? Poorly. A pause, and then better. Kukuku, that is usually the sequence. Naruto stood and descended from the roof, stepping down through the air as if stairs existed where they demonstrably did not. He landed in front of Itachi and looked at him. "You're dying." Flat. As a fact, Itachi did not flinch. "I have months, perhaps a year." "You have weeks at this trajectory." Naruto reached toward Itachi's chest. The older Uchiha tensed but did not move. The white glove pressed against his sternum, and something happened. A warmth, a pulse, something that moved through Itachi's deteriorating cells like a tide filling empty pools. It lasted 3 seconds. When Naruto withdrew his hand, the perpetual ache in Itachi's lungs had lessened. It would lessen further over days. It would not disappear. Naruto could unmake armies, but cellular repair at this scale required something even he could not grant without cost. But it bought time. Months, maybe a year beyond what Itachi had left. "This is not a cure," Naruto said. "This is a stay of execution." Itachi looked at his own hands, the hands that had been slowly losing their grip for years. They were steady, steadier than they had been since the disease first announced itself. He looked at Naruto. "Why?" "Because Sasuke deserves more than one conversation with his brother. Because your story is unfinished in ways that matter to someone in my orbit." He adjusted his gloves. "And because I have decided it should be so." Itachi was quiet for a very long time. "You are nothing like what the intelligence reports describe," he said. "Intelligence reports are written by people who cannot perceive what they are describing." Naruto turned. "Stay alive, Itachi. Your brother is going to need someone to spar with who isn't me. My version of sparring tends to be conclusive." He walked into the dark between the trees, and the night closed behind him like a door shutting on a room that had just gotten warmer. What followed moved with the speed of a decision already made. Naruto returned to Konoha and went directly to the Hokage's hospital room. The hour was late. The guards at the door looked at him and stepped aside without being asked. They had been briefed, or more accurately, they had seen what happened during the invasion, and their bodies refused to be obstacles to whatever this boy wanted. Hiruzen was awake, propped on pillows, reading reports by candlelight because the old man could not sleep when his village was wounded and someone had to read the damage assessments. "Danzo is moving," Naruto said from the window. Hiruzen looked up. No surprise, no flinch. The fondness in his eyes was the fondness of someone looking at something both terrifying and beloved simultaneously. "He's been moving for 40 years. What's changed?" "Speed. He's accelerating because you're weakened and the council is frightened. He intends to take the hat within the week." Hiruzen set down his papers. He looked at the candle. At the flame that flickered in a draft from the window Naruto had entered through without opening. "I know," the old man said. "I've known for years what he is, what he's done. The blood on his hands is measured in generations, Naruto. And I have failed. Every single day I've allowed him to operate, I have failed. Then stop failing." Naruto's voice held no accusation. It was a statement of possibility. The same tone in which you'd say then open the door to someone standing in front of one. Hiruzen looked at him. And the weight of 70 years of leadership, of compromise, of choosing lesser evils because the greater good demanded patience, all of it sat in his face like geology. "Can you?" Hiruzen asked. "The question you should be asking is, why am I still allowing this?" Naruto adjusted his cuffs. "The answer changes tomorrow." The emergency council session convened at noon. Danzo had spent 40 years building toward this moment. Every blackmail file, every stolen favor, every root operative positioned in critical infrastructure, every council member whose secrets he held like knives at their backs. 40 years of preparation clicking into place with the precision of a machine designed for exactly one purpose. He stood at the head of the chamber, his cane before him, his bandaged arm hidden beneath robes, his exposed eyes sweeping the assembled faces, the civilian council, the shinobi advisors, the clan heads who attended by tradition even when they intended to abstain. "The third Hokage is incapacitated," Danzo said. His voice was a blade wrapped in silk. "The village has been invaded. Our walls were breached. Our economy is strained by reconstruction. We require strength. We require vision. We require a hand that does not hesitate." The votes were lined up. Danzo could count. He had always been able to count. 12 in favor, 3 abstaining, 2 against. The math was done before the meeting began. "I nominate myself for the position of 6th Hoka." The wall opened. It didn't break, didn't crack, didn't explode. The stone simply parted, flowing aside like a curtain being drawn by a host greeting an expected guest, and sealed again behind the figure who stepped through it, as if doors were a concept meant for people who required permission to enter rooms. Naruto stood at the head of the chamber, black suit, white gloves, red and black eyes that moved across every face with the unhurried precision of someone counting items on a shelf he owns. The room went silent. 14 people, politicians, clan heads, war veterans, and every one of them stopped breathing for a count of 2. Danzo's hand tightened on his cane, his jaw locked, his exposed eye fixed on the boy with something that mixed hatred and fear into a compound more volatile than either alone. "This is a closed session," Danzo said. His voice did not shake. He was too old and too proud for that. "You have no authority here, boy." "Authority," Naruto said, and the words sounded different in his mouth, heavier, as if it had been waiting for someone worthy of it. "There is a distinction between power and authority. You have the former. I am the latter." Danzo's hand moved beneath his robes. A signal. 6 root operatives materialized throughout the chamber, dropping from concealed positions in the ceiling, emerging from behind pillars, appearing in doorways. His finest, his last generation, conditioned since childhood to have no fear, no hesitation, no self beyond the mission. They moved toward Naruto. 6 blades drawn, 6 bodies that did not know what retreat meant, because the concept had been surgically excised from their conditioning. Naruto opened the demonic fear aura. He opened it to a threshold that went past intimidation, past the freeze response, past the primal brain's survival reflex, and into something else entirely. Something that told every biological system in its radius that the concept of threat was inadequate and the concept of continuation was no longer guaranteed. The root operatives, those conditioned empty shells, those men and women who were supposed to feel nothing, whose emotional centers had been severed and sealed and burned away by Danzo's finest psychological engineers, dropped, one by one and then all at once. Their bodies hit the floor, not in defeat but in absolute involuntary submission. Their conditioning had made them fearless against human threats. This was not a human threat. This bypassed conditioning the way water bypasses rock by finding the cracks that rock didn't know it had. They lay on the stone floor in postures that mixed collapse with supplication. Their blades fell from hands that had forgotten the concept of gripping. Danzo was alone. His hand ripped the bandage from his arm. The Sharingan eyes were revealed. 10 of them, embedded in the pale flesh of his stolen appendage, each one spinning to life. The power of the Uchiha clan, harvested over decades, implanted through procedures that had killed most who attempted them. His final contingency, his absolute defense, Izanagi, the reality rewriting technique, 30 seconds of temporal immunity. Any death, any damage, any outcome, retroactively unmade by the cost of one eye closing permanently. 10 eyes. 300 seconds of being unkillable by any conventional measure. Danzo's hand began forming seals. Naruto pointed at the first eye, index finger extended. Gravity collapse. The eye sealed itself. Not destroyed. The orbital socket compressed. The lids pressed together by a force that could not be resisted because it operated on a scale below the technique's ability to prevent. The Sharingan within went dark. The Izanagi it contained died unborn. Danzo's face twisted. He pushed chakra into the next eye. Gravity collapse. Second eye closed, permanently. The skin around it pressing inward, sealing, denying. Gravity collapse. Third, Naruto was walking forward as he did this, each step bringing his finger closer to the arm, each step accompanied by another eye closing, another contingency dying, another decade of preparation rendered irrelevant by a force that did not care what the technique inside was supposed to do, because the technique never got the chance to do it. Fourth, fifth, sixth, Danzo was screaming now. His voice filled the chamber, raw, desperate, the sound of 40 years of certainty meeting something it could not outthink. His hand clawed at his arm as if he could manually force the eyes open. They would not open. They would never open again. Seventh, eighth, ninth, one eye left. Danzo stumbled backward. His cane dropped. His back hit the wall of the chamber. His one remaining natural eye was wide, animal, stripped of every layer of composure and cunning and patience that had defined him. 10th. Gravity collapse. The last eye closed. Danzo's arm fell to his side. Dead weight. Every stolen Sharingan sealed permanently behind lids that physics had decided were shut. His body pressed against the wall. His breath came in shallow gasps. His hands, both of them, the useful one and the useless one, rose to form seals. The suicide technique. Reverse four-symbol sealing. A final contingency that would take everything within the blast radius with him, destroying evidence and enemies alike. His fingers moved through the signs. The last thing he would do, the last expression of the will that had driven him for 7 decades. Naruto watched him complete every seal. Did not interrupt. Did not rush. Let the old man feel for one final breath that he had done everything available to him, that there was nothing left undone, that the effort had been complete, the final seal formed. You confuse survival with victory, Naruto said. Allow me to correct that. He placed one finger against Danzo's chest, the white glove pressed against the dark fabric of the old man's robes with the gentleness of a period placed at the end of a very long sentence. End of world. The sphere was the size of a coin. A black circle on Danzo's chest, small enough to miss if you weren't looking. It sat there for 2 seconds. 2 seconds where Danzo's eye met Naruto's, and in Danzo's expression was something that might have been understanding. The way understanding comes to a man in the final instant before all understanding becomes irrelevant. Then Danzo ceased. The sphere consumed him inward. The body, the robes, the dead arm, the sealed eyes, the suicide technique half activated. All of it pulled into the black point and gone. Gone the way a word is gone once the page is burned. There was a spot on the chamber floor, slightly darker than the surrounding stone, and it faded in seconds. That was all. 40 years of shadow, 40 years of stolen eyes and murdered children and manipulated wars and broken families, gone in the time between one breath and the next. Naruto straightened his glove. He turned and looked at the council. 14 people, ashen, several on the floor. One had fainted. Homura's glasses were on the ground, stepped on by his own retreating feet. Koharu was gripping the edge of her desk so hard the wood had cracked. The third Hokage's hat belongs on the third Hokage, Naruto said. Nobody spoke. Nobody would speak for several minutes after he left. Fufufu, I trust there will be no further emergency sessions regarding succession. He walked to the wall. It opened for him. He walked through. It closed. In his hospital bed, Hiruzen received the news an hour later. The Anbu who delivered it looked like he'd been asked to explain quantum physics to a child while skydiving, overwhelmed by the information and unsure where gravity would end. The old man listened, closed his eyes, and the weight that left his face was visible the way weight is visible when a building's foundations are reinforced. Something structural changed. Something that had been holding too much for too long was relieved of a burden it should never have carried alone. Thank you, Hiruzen whispered. Outside the hospital window, Sasuke stood on the adjacent roof. He had been watching through the chamber's glass ceiling, his Sharingan recording everything, his jaw tight with the specific frustration of a man who wanted to be needed to be the one. But he wasn't ready. He knew it now. The way you know the ground is solid, through contact, through testing, through the honest experience of standing on it and finding it holds. He turned from the window. His hands were fists at his sides, but the fury in them was different now. It wasn't the blind, consuming fire that Itachi had stoked for 8 years. It was something smaller, hotter, more useful. The fire of a man building something rather than burning something down. He went home to train. 6 weeks later, the sky over Konoha turned wrong. It started at dawn, a pressure change that made every sensor-type ninja in the village stand up from whatever they were doing and look east. The air thickened, the wind stopped. Birds fell from their perches and sat on the ground with their wings folded, heads tucked, bodies pressed flat against the earth. The 6 paths of pain arrived simultaneously. They came over the eastern wall in a formation that had no name because nothing had ever attacked a village in this configuration before. 6 bodies, 1 will. The Deva path at center, orange-haired, ring-dyed, its piercings catching the morning light. The animal path to its left. The Ashura path to its right, the human path trailing, the Preta path sweeping wide, the Naraka path dropping toward the village center. The Deva path raised its hand over the first residential district and whispered a single word: Shinra Tensei. The repulsion force hit the district like a god pressing its thumb into a sandbox. Buildings flattened, streets cratered. The very earth compressed outward from the point of impact in concentric rings of destruction that widened and swallowed everything in their expansion. 50 structures, homes, shops, schools, reduced to foundations and rubble in one pulse. People died. Instantly. Under falling walls and in crushed rooms and in the simple, terrible bad luck of being in the wrong part of the village when a force beyond human scale decided that everything there should stop being above ground. The animal path's hands hit the ground. Summoning circles blazed. 5 of them, each one producing something massive. A multi-headed dog the size of a building. A giant bird with a wingspan that cast shadow over 3 city blocks. A charging rhinoceros of solid stone. A centipede that erupted from the earth and tore through underground infrastructure like a worm through soft soil. A chameleon that vanished the moment it materialized, invisible and devastating, the Ashura path converted. Its body split open, flesh becoming metal, skin becoming armor, human form becoming artillery platform. Rockets launched from its shoulders, laser-focused beams from its transformed head. Each shot found a target, guard towers, response teams, fortification points, and removed them from the tactical landscape. In the market district, the human path walked through the crowd of fleeing civilians. It reached out its hand and touched a running woman's head and pulled. What came out was shimmering and intangible, and the woman dropped empty, and the path moved to the next person, reading the memories of the dying for intelligence. The Preta path positioned itself at the village's main intersection and stood, waiting. Every jutsu fired in its direction by responding shinobi, fire, water, lightning, earth, hit its raised palms and disappeared, absorbed, fed into the bottomless reservoir of its stolen chakra architecture, making it stronger with every attempt to stop it. And in the village square, the Naraka path summoned the king of hell. The entity rose from the ground, massive, head splitting the air with its emergence, a divine judge called to the mortal plane to weigh the living against standards no living thing could meet. Its mouth opened and the people nearest to it screamed, because what looked back from inside that mouth was not darkness. It was judgment, and judgment found them wanting. Konoha was dying. The response was fast. This village had survived invasions before, had protocols, had veterans who moved on instinct when the alarms hit. Jonin's squads mobilized, Anbu deployed. Kakashi's Sharingan was uncovered before the second building fell, and he was moving, coordinating, then his voice cutting through the chaos with the authority of a man who had faced exactly this kind of overwhelming force before and survived. Zabuza was in the eastern district before the dust from the first Shinra Tensei settled. The executioner's blade came off his back and into the path of the rhinoceros summons charge. Blade meeting skull with an impact that stopped the massive beast's momentum dead and sent cracks spiderwebbing through its stone skull. Haku appeared on the adjacent rooftop, ice mirrors crystallizing in a defensive perimeter around a cluster of trapped civilians, his senbon creating a kill zone that nothing could cross. Sasuke engaged the Asura path, Chidori screaming in his palm, Sharingan tracking the missile trajectories, his body moving with the speed and precision that 2 months of training with something beyond comprehension had given him. He dodged. He struck. The Chidori hit the Asura path's shoulder and tore metal. Actual damage, Actual penetration, actual proof that what Naruto had been teaching him wasn't theoretical. Sakura was in the field hospital within minutes of the first impact. Her hands glowing green, medical jutsu flowing, her voice commanding medics twice her age, because combat medicine didn't care about rank when lives were bleeding out on your table. They fought. All of them. Every shinobi in the village gave everything they had against the 6 bodies that moved with one mind and struck with one purpose. And it wasn't enough. They knew it wasn't enough. Zabuza could hold the summons, but more kept coming. Sasuke could damage the Asura path, but it rebuilt itself faster than he could destroy. Kakashi could coordinate, but coordination meant nothing against a force that could level a district in a single pulse. They were buying time. They all knew who they were buying it for. On a rooftop overlooking the village center, Naruto stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He had been there for 3 minutes, watching. His red and black eyes moved across the destruction below. The fires, the falling buildings, the screaming. The deaths, Haku appeared beside him. Blood on his arm again. Ice crystals in his hair from a mirror that had shattered under the Devapath's repulsion force. Master? Naruto looked at the King of Hell in the village square, at the human path pulling souls from civilians, at the devastation spreading outward like a stain. His expression was flat, unreadable. And then something shifted behind his eyes. A temperature change measured in units too small for human detection, but visible to Haku, who knew his master the way water knows the shape of its container. 3 minutes was already more than this deserved. He stepped off the roof. He fell, then didn't. The descent slowed and he touched the ground in the village center the way a leaf touches the surface of a still pond. His shoes met cobblestone. His jacket settled. He stood in the square with 6 paths of divine destruction tearing the village apart around him, and he adjusted his cuffs. The Naraka path felt him first. It turned, and the King of Hell turned with it, the massive judging entity orienting on the new presence the way a compass needle finds north. Its mouth opened wider. Whatever mechanism it used to weigh souls extended toward Naruto. Naruto looked up at it. Soul snatch. He reached. His hand extended, palm open, fingers spread, the white glove catching a light that had no source. His will pressed outward and found the King of Hell, found the thing that existed inside the divine entity that was supposed to be beyond mortal reach, beyond mortal comprehension, beyond any force a human could direct. The King of Hell had a soul. Everything has a soul. Even gods, even divine summons, even concepts given form and weight and presence. They have something at their center that holds their shape, and Naruto's hand closed around it. The sound the King of Hell made had no human equivalent. It was a frequency that cracked stone in the square, that made the fires around them lean away, that sent every living person within hearing distance to their knees with their hands pressed against their ears. A divine thing screaming because something had gripped the thing it was made of and squeezed. It folded. The King of Hell, ancient, massive, unjudgeable by anything mortal, collapsed inward like a star dying. Its body compressed toward the point where Naruto's hand gripped something invisible. Smaller and smaller and smaller, the divine form compacting under the weight of a will that did not recognize the concept of divine immunity until there was nothing left above the ground, and the Naraka path beneath it dropped to the cobblestones like a puppet with its strings cut. Naruto lowered his hand. Every shinobi in the village square who had witnessed this, 20 of them, leaf ninja who had been fighting for their lives against the remaining paths, went still. Their fighting stopped. Their techniques died in their hands. They stared at the boy in the black suit who had just killed a god by reaching out and taking the thing that made it divine. The animal path reacted. Its hands hit the ground. Every remaining summon released simultaneously. The multi-headed dog, the bird, the centipede, every creature still manifested in the village. Plus more, summoned fresh, a storm of massive lethal animals flooding toward a single point. Shadow detachment. Naruto's shadow extended. From the normal pool of darkness beneath his feet, it spread outward in tendrils that grew and rose and became three-dimensional. Hands of pure darkness, each one the size of a house, reaching upward from the ground like a forest of black limbs. They caught every summon, every single one. 8 massive creatures, each one capable of destroying buildings, caught in midair by shadow hands that gripped their bodies with absolute force. They hung there, motionless. Held in the air like specimens pinned for display, Naruto raised his other hand, palm flat, pointed at the center of the suspended mass. Absolute end. The beam fired into the cluster, black and dense and wrong, the light around it bending away in ribbons, the color of the sky above the firing line, shifting from blue to that bruised purple-black that Konoha was learning to associate with the end of things that should not have been. The summons ceased. All of them. The beam ate through their bodies and left nothing behind. No blood, no bone, no evidence of existence. Where 8 creatures the size of buildings had hung in the air, there was now empty space and a column of black energy that continued past them and carved a channel through the clouds above, visible from every point in the village. The sky stayed purple for 30 seconds. The animal path fell beneath its empty summoning circles, erased from relevance by association. Across the eastern district, the Ashura path had fully converted, its entire body now a weapons platform, every system firing simultaneously in a barrage aimed at the approaching presence it could feel through its shared connection to the other paths. Rockets, beams, explosive projectiles. A storm of metallic death pouring from a single transformed body toward a single target. Naruto raised one finger. Black lightning. A single arc, thin, targeted. It did not aim at the weapons. It did not aim at the armor. It aimed at the chakra architecture, the rods, the connections, the signal receivers that linked this body to Nagato's will hundreds of miles away. The black electricity found those pathways and ran through them, overloading every junction, burning every connection, frying the infrastructure that made this body more than meat. The Asura path collapsed mid-conversion. Half its body still in weapon form, half still flesh. The transformation frozen between states by the sudden absence of the signal driving it. It hit the ground in a heap of confused metal and dead tissue, and the weapons that had been firing stopped because there was nobody left to fire them. The human path was next. It had been moving through the refugee crowd, reaching, pulling, extracting memories and souls from people who couldn't fight back. It had gathered information from a dozen minds already. It was reaching for the next when Naruto appeared in front of it. The path's hand extended on reflex. The technique that pulled souls from bodies activated automatically, reaching toward the figure before it, extending its grip toward whatever lived inside the boy in the black suit. Its hand touched Naruto's chest. It reached inside. It found the soul. It kept reaching. The technique was built to grip a soul and pull it free. The soul it found did not have a bottom. The human path's hand went deeper and deeper, the extracting mechanism searching for the edges of what it had grabbed, searching for the boundaries that would allow it to grip and pull and remove. There were no edges. There was no bottom. The technique reached and reached and reached, and what it found was an ocean when it was built for puddles, a void when it was calibrated for containers. The human path's hand did not come back the same. Something about the reaching changed it. The fingers that had entered Naruto's body emerged with the texture of spent ash, the color of drained metal, the weight of something that had been somewhere too deep and come back carrying the pressure. The path stood in the street, still upright, still technically functioning, but its eyes were empty. Its hand was empty. Its instructions were gone, overwritten by the simple, overwhelming fact of having touched something that exceeded its operating parameters by a margin that could not be expressed in numbers. It stood there like a thing that forgot what it was doing. It would stand there until someone moved it. 5 down, 1 left. The Preta path had positioned itself at the main intersection. It had been absorbing everything fired at the battlefield, every jutsu from every fight across the village. Its reserves were astronomical. It glowed with stolen energy, every cell saturated with the combined output of 100 shinobi's efforts to stop the invasion. It was, by any conventional standard, approaching invincible, an absorption barrier that could drink any technique, backed by a reserve of stolen power that made it capable of surviving anything chakra-based. Naruto raised one palm. He pointed it at the Preta path from 100 meters away. The barrier activated. The path's hands raised, the absorption field extending between them, ready to drink whatever came. Black lightning. The arc fired. Black. A single bolt, straight and true. It hit the absorption barrier. The barrier did not absorb it. The black lightning was not chakra. It was not nature energy. It was not Biju power. It was not anything the Pritapath's absorption mechanism was designed to recognize or process. It hit the barrier and passed through it the way sunlight passes through glass. The barrier never registered it as a technique to be absorbed because it did not conform to any category the mechanism could identify. The arc entered the Pritapath's body. And there, inside the oversaturated shell of stolen chakra, the black electricity found a reservoir with no outlet and no organization, and it ignited. Every stolen technique, every absorbed jutsu, every drop of power the Pritapath had consumed from 100 shinobi's desperate attacks lit up. Black lightning arcs between the stored energies, connecting them, exciting them, turning the internal reservoir from a controlled store into something critically unstable. The Pritapath's body illuminated from inside. Every vein visible as a line of black light. Every cell outlined in impossible electricity. It lasted 2 seconds. Then it came apart, outward, the stored energy releasing in an undirected explosion that would have leveled the intersection if Naruto hadn't raised his other hand and said, "End of world." The sphere appeared between himself and the detonation. It was the size of a basketball. The explosion, the full force of 100 absorbed jutsu releasing simultaneously, hit the sphere and was consumed, eaten. The energy entered the black point and did not come out. The shockwave that should have destroyed 3 city blocks was swallowed in its entirety by something the size of a fruit. The sphere collapsed back into his palm. The intersection was silent. Where the Pritapath had stood, there was a scorched circle on the cobblestones and nothing else. One left. The Deva path stood at the far end of the village's main avenue. Behind it, the destruction of its opening Shinra Tensei, flattened buildings, cratered earth, the ruins of the residential district it had erased with its first attack. Before it, 400 meters of empty street, and at the end of that street, the boy in the black suit. The village watched. From rooftops and rubble and the perimeter of the devastation, every shinobi in Konoha, those still standing, those still conscious, turned their eyes toward the avenue. Zabuza stood on a ruined building's remains, his blade in the ground beside him. His scarred face was split by something that was too fierce for a smile and too warm for a snarl. Haku stood beside him. His mask was gone, lost in the fighting, abandoned, unnecessary now. His face held its certainty like something polished. Sasuke was on a rooftop to the east, both Sharingan blazing, recording everything because this was the only copy that would ever exist and his blood would not let him miss a frame. Sakura was at the edge of the field hospital, the hands still glowing, patience at her back, her eyes fixed on the figure at the end of the avenue. The warmth in her chest was not fear. It had never been fear. She knew what it was now, and she did not look away from it. Kakashi was beside her, his Sharingan uncovered, his book nowhere in evidence. He was paying attention the way he paid attention to nothing else in his life. Because this mattered in a way that existing records could not contain. Gaara stood at the village's eastern wall. He had traveled from the sand. He had arrived an hour before the invasion, and his timing was either coincidence or something else, and he did not question which. His sand was curled tight around him. Shukaku was silent, pressed against the farthest wall of its seal, one eye closed, body curled in the universal posture of do not see me. But Gaara watched. He owed this. He owed the watching. The Deva path raised both hands. The ringed eyes, Nato's eyes, transmitted across hundreds of miles into a dead body remade as an instrument of a grieving god's will, focused on the approaching figure. Shinra Tensei. Full force. Everything. The repulsion technique that had flattened a district concentrated into a single directional blast, focused down the avenue toward one target. The air itself became a weapon, compressed, launched, a wall of force that tore the cobblestones from the ground and the facades from buildings and turned everything in its path into shrapnel, moving at the speed of absolute rejection. Naruto planted his feet. He spread both arms slightly, palms open, facing the oncoming apocalypse. The Shinra Tensei hit him and split. The force parted around his body the way a river parts around a stone that has never moved and will never move. The blast streamed past him on both sides. Buildings behind him erupted, walls blew out, the very ground on either side of his position was torn free and launched backward. But where he stood, in the eye of the splitting force, there was stillness. His suit did not flutter, his hair did not move, his white gloves stayed clean. The Shinra Tensei ended. The Devapath's hands dropped. 5-second cooldown before it could use the technique again. The ringed eyes stared at the figure still standing in a cleared corridor of absolute stillness. Undamaged, unmoved, unchanged. Naruto raised one hand. Index finger pointed. Gravity collapsed. The reversal hit the Devapath like its own force returned threefold. The body launched, backward through the ruined district it had created, through 3 buildings that had already been reduced to frameworks, through the rubble and the dust and the remains of what had been homes hours ago. It flew for 400 meters before hitting something solid enough to stop it, the remnants of a reinforced concrete building that cracked on impact but held. The Devapath pulled itself from the rubble. One arm hanging wrong, one leg responding slowly. Ringed eyes still active, still transmitting, still receiving. Naruto was already there. Spatial severance. The distance was cut. He stood before the broken Devapath without having crossed the space between. His hand reached out. His white glove pressed against the face of the last path, against the piercings, against the cold skin, against the ringed eyes that looked back at him with Nagato's will from hundreds of miles away. Naruto looked into those eyes, through them, past the relay, past the distance, past the architecture that connected puppet to puppeteer. He found Nagato in his tower, found Conan beside him, found the withered body in the walking machine, the tubes and the metal and the sustained existence that was not living by any definition worth respecting. Temptation world. Distance did not limit the technique. It crossed the miles like a thought crosses the gap between intention and action. Instant, total, arriving at its destination before the destination knew it was being reached. Nagato fell. In his tower in Amegakure, with rain streaking the windows and Conan reaching for him with paper wings already forming, Nagato fell. His mind left the tower, left the machine, left the body that was already barely alive and entered the black fire. What he found there was scale. The temptation world showed him what it showed everyone, truth. But truth has many registers, and the truth it found for Nagato was specific to his architecture. It showed him grief, his grief. Yahiko's death on the blade, the rain, the mud, the moment that broke everything that came after. It showed him the plan he built on that grief, the collection, the weapon, the forced peace, the moon's eye. It showed him every step between that mud-soaked day and this one, and it showed him what each step looked like from the outside. Not evil, not malice, just grief given too much power and too long a timeline. A boy who lost his friend and spent 20 years trying to make a world where loss was impossible, without realizing that the architecture of that world was built on the same loss he was trying to prevent. The black fire burned, but it did not destroy. It stripped. Layer after layer of conviction, of certainty, of the absolute faith that the plan was correct, stripped away to reveal what lived underneath. A boy in the rain who missed his friend. That was all. At the bottom. Under everything. Just grief. Just loss. Just a human being who hurt and chose the largest possible response because smaller ones couldn't contain what he felt. 3 seconds in the real world. An eternity in the black fire. Nato came back. Conan was holding him, her arms around his shoulders, paper wings spread, her face pressed against his temple, her voice saying his name over and over. His eyes were open, ringed, wet. The paths fell. All of them. Across Konoha, the remaining connections severed as Nagato's will withdrew from the relay. The Deva path collapsed beneath Naruto's hand, the piercings losing their glow, the body becoming what it had always been underneath the technique. A dead man's shell. Naruto withdrew his hand, stood in the rubble, looked up at the sky that was returning to blue. You built this from grief, he said to the eyes that could no longer hear him directly, but would receive this message through whatever was left of the connection. Grief is not a foundation, it is a ruin. In Amegakure, Nagato wept. Conan held him and he wept for the first time since Yahiko's blood was still warm on his hands, and the sound of it was ugly and human and alive. The doubt was there now, living in his chest where certainty used to stand. The plan that had seemed like the only path, the collection, the weapon, the forced peace, looked different from inside the ruin of itself. Conan said nothing. She held him. That was what she had always done, and it was everything. The village was quiet in the aftermath. The rubble was real. The dead were real. The cost of 3 minutes, the time Naruto had given the paths before he descended, was measured in lives and buildings and a district that would need to be rebuilt from its foundations. He stood in the avenue and looked at the damage. His face was unreadable. Something behind his eyes, something that had not been there when this story began, registered the weight of what had been lost while he watched. It was a small thing, a flicker, the kind of change measured in degrees too small to announce themselves. But Haku saw it when his master returned to the rooftop where he waited. And Haku said nothing, because naming it would diminish it, and some things grew better in silence. 3 weeks passed. Konoha rebuilt again. Faster this time, because the village was getting practiced at rising from its own ashes, and because the labor force included a man with a giant sword who could fell trees with one swing, and an ice user who could create construction-grade frameworks from water vapor. Naruto was present in the rebuilding. He did not swing hammers or carry beams. He walked through the reconstruction, and the workers moved around him the way you move around a monument, with awareness, with something between respect and the memory of power. His presence was enough. It said, "This village stands because I stand in it. Build it well." Obito came on a Tuesday that was not important enough to name. He came through the dimensional fold of Kamui, the signature spiral of space-time being punctured by an eye technique that should have been Kakashi's but lived in a face that wore too many masks. He emerged in the training ground outside Konoha at midnight, his orange mask reflecting moonlight, his single Sharingan blazing through the eye hole. He had adapted. He had lost pain. He had watched every forward position of the Eye of the Moon plan collapse under the weight of something operating in Konoha that defied every model his decades of scheming had built. He was the last moving piece of a plan that had been coming apart for months. And the only thing a man in that position can do is commit fully or die having done nothing. Obito chose to commit. He activated Kamui's intangibility. His body phased, partially existing in the physical world, partially in the dimensional pocket that served as both his defense and his method of travel. He would approach from the ethereal dimension. He would strike from the space between spaces. He would spatial severance. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Obito felt the cut before he understood it, a sensation like a door being slammed on his body while he was halfway through it. The Kamui dimension, the space he existed partially inside, was severed. The corridor he used to phase was sealed. The dimensional fold that allowed him to exist in 2 places simultaneously was cut like thread. Obito screamed. Half his body was in the physical world. Half was in the Kamui dimension, and the passage between them was now gone. Sealed, severed, the dimensional corridor closed by something that treated space-time like fabric to be cut with scissors. He was caught, stretched across a fold in reality that no longer existed as a fold. His body pulled between 2 states with no transition between them. The pain was not physical. It was existential. The sensation of being in 2 places when the connection between those places has been denied. Naruto appeared 10 feet away, arms crossed, red and black eyes observing the stretched figure with an expression that held curiosity rather than mercy. He reached out with one hand and gripped the fold. His fingers closed around the invisible seam where physical space met dimensional pocket, and he pulled. The way you'd open a stuck drawer. The dimensional corridor reopened, briefly, momentarily, just long enough for Obito's body to choose a side. It chose the physical world. Obito fell through the reopened fold and hit the ground of the training field, his body whole, his mask cracked, his single Sharingan spinning wildly as his mind tried to process what had just happened to every law of physics his technique relied upon. Naruto stood over him. He reached down and removed the mask. The face underneath was scarred. Young beneath the scarring, younger than the years behind the mask. One Sharingan eye, one Rinnegan eye. A face that had belonged to a boy who wanted to be Hokage and now belonged to the architecture of destruction that boy had become. Naruto was quiet, 3 full seconds. And for the first time in this story, the first moment the reader sees it, genuine surprise crossed his features, small, brief, but real. "You should be dead," he said. Obito laughed. "It was broken. Should have been. Decades ago." Naruto read him. Soul snatch, partial, examination only. His hand pressed flat against Obito's chest, and he reached past the flesh and found the story written there. He saw Rin, the field. The hand through her chest that wasn't meant for her and was performed by the one person in the world she would have wanted it least from. He saw the cave beneath the rock, Madara's voice in the dark. The seed planted in the worst moment of a boy's life, watered by grief, grown into a decade of damage that had shaped the world's trajectory. He saw the Eye of the Moon plan, the infinite Tsukuyomi, the tree, the dream, the ending of all endings, a world asleep under one genjutsu rather than awake in 1,000 pains. He saw where it came from, the same place Nagato's plan came from, the same place every plan like it came from, a boy who hurt, who was told by someone strong enough to make it sound true that the hurt could be fixed by breaking everything else. Naruto released, stepped back, looked at what was on the ground before him. "Grief is not a foundation," he said. "It is a ruin. Madara used your worst day to build his best weapon." He crouched, eye level, close enough that Obito could see every impossible detail of the red and black eyes that looked at him with something that was almost understanding. "You spent a decade believing that made you powerful." He stood. "It made you useful. There is a distinction." Obito lay on the ground. The mask was gone. Kamui was gone, or rather usable, but his body would not attempt it, would not reach for the fold that had been severed and reopened, and demonstrated to be entirely within Naruto's ability to control. His Sharingan spun without purpose. His Rinnegan stared at the sky. He was, for the first time in a decade, just Obito, just the boy under the rock. Just the kid who wanted to be Hokage and never got the chance because the world broke him before he could grow into it. "Madara," Obito said. His voice was empty, scraped clean. "He's coming back. The preparations are all ready. I know." Naruto turned and walked toward the tree line, over his shoulder without looking back. "Madara is next. If you want to watch what happens to what he built, keep up." Obito lay on the ground for a long time. Then he stood and followed. Madara Uchiha resurrected on a Thursday. The Gedo statue, the shell of the 10 tails, the husk of the divine tree, kept in Obito's dimensional pocket for decades as the vessel for the Eye of the Moon plan's culmination, activated without Obito's input. The preparations Madara had made across a century triggered their final sequence, and from the wooden shell of the ancient weapon, a body rebuilt itself. It was not subtle. The chakra signature that erupted from the Gedo statue's cocoon registered on every sensor in every hidden village simultaneously. A pressure wave of raw, divine tier energy that spread outward from its origin point, like a shockwave from the birth of something that should not have been born. Madara emerged in the field outside Konoha. He chose the field because Madara Uchiha had never in his long existence chosen to hide. He was not the kind of threat that operated from shadow. He was the kind that arrived in daylight, in full view, and dared the world to look at him. 6-path sage mode. The full reformation of his body using the divine chakra of the Gedo statue. Truth-seeking balls, 9 of them, orbiting his frame in a slow black ring, each one containing the essence of every nature transformation compressed into spheres of universal nullification. His eyes, Rinnegan, purple, ringed, swept the landscape. Then the perfect Susanoo manifested. It rose from his body like dawn rising behind a mountain. A spectral giant the color of deep ocean, armored, armed, its crowned head splitting the clouds as it reached full height. The blade in its hand was made of concentrated chakra shaped by a century of refinement, and its edge caught the morning light in a way that seemed to cut the light itself. Madara stood within the Susanoo's chest, arms crossed, his voice carrying across the field with the weight of someone who had earned every syllable through 100 years of being the most dangerous thing alive. "Something from before," Madara said. He was looking at the village, looking through the walls, looking at what lived inside. I have been waiting for something worth the end of my patience. Naruto materialized on the field. He did not walk there. He did not fly. He was in the village, and then he was in the field. The distance between simply ceasing to be a factor. His black suit was immaculate. His white gloves caught the morning light. His red and black eyes looked up at the perfect Susanoo, at the mountain-sized spectral warrior that cast its shadow over 3 districts of Konoha. With the expression of a man examining an interesting but ultimately familiar exhibit, he adjusted his gloves, left then right. Kukuku, how flattering, and how tedious that you chose this for your entrance. Madara looked down at him. From within the Susanoo's chest, through the spectral armor, the Rinnegan found the small figure on the ground and measured it. The intelligence reports had not been wrong. What stood below was not a boy in any meaningful sense. It was something wearing a boy. Something that made the divine chakra flowing through Madara's resurrected body feel like candlelight in the presence of something that existed before fire was invented. Lesser things have tried to stop me, Madara said. His perfect Susanoo's blade rose. They are no longer things. Lesser things have tried to stop me, Naruto replied, his voice carrying upward without effort. They are no longer things. The blade came down, a swing that split the horizon. The Susanoo's weapon cut through the air with enough force to carve the landscape. The ground ahead of the impact point cracking in advance from the displaced air pressure alone. A blow that could bisect a mountain, aimed at a figure the size of an ant relative to its scale. Naruto raised one hand. His shadow extended beneath him and grew. Shadow detachment at a scale never before deployed. The darkness beneath his feet erupted upward, forming limbs, forming mass, forming something that matched the Susanoo's height. Multiple shadow hands, 4, 5, 8 of them, rose from the ground like a forest of black pillars and caught the descending blade. The impact shook the earth for a mile. The sound was thunder given physical form. The shadow hands held the blade in place, 10 fingers of pure darkness gripping an edge that could cut dimensions. And the ground beneath Naruto's feet cratered 3 inches from the transmitted force. Naruto floated free of the crater, rising, ascending along the shadow arms that held the Susanoo's weapon at bay. He rose until he was at eye level with the spectral giant, with Madara inside, whose Rinnegan was processing data it could not reconcile with any known system. There is a distinction between power and authority, Naruto said. You have the former, I am the latter. He plunged his free hand forward into the Susanoo's chest. His arm passed through the spectral armor like it passed through everything. Physical barriers were suggestions, and Naruto had never accepted a suggestion he didn't agree with. Soul snatch. His fingers found Madara through the armor, found the soul that lived inside the resurrected body, a soul that had burned for nearly a century without dimming, that had survived death itself through sheer refusal to accept it as permanent, that carried the weight of every ambition and every loss and every decision made across 100 years of being the single most dangerous will ever born to this world. He squeezed. The perfect Susanoo cracked from the inside outward, starting at the point where Naruto's hand disappeared into its chest. Fracture lines spread through the spectral armor like ice breaking under pressure applied from below. The technique that had never been breached, that represented the absolute peak of what the Sharingan could produce, that had gone toe-to-toe with tailed beasts and won, fracturing under a force that worked from its source rather than against its surface. Madara's eyes went wide. The Rinnegan blazed. His will, the will that had controlled the Nine Tails, that had challenged Hashirama Senju at the Valley of the End, that had orchestrated the trajectory of the entire shinobi world from beyond death, surged against the grip on his soul and resisted for 1 second. One extraordinary, unprecedented second. Madara Uchiha's will denied the soul snatch, pushed back, found purchase against the grip and held, because he was the only being in this story whose determination was vast enough to contest even this, not win against it, not overcome it, but refuse to submit for exactly 1 breath longer than anyone else had managed. It cost him everything. The Susanoo shattered. The resistance broke him open. Every ounce of chakra that had been maintaining the spectral giant redirected to the single desperate effort of keeping his soul in his body. The spectral warrior came apart in a cascade of dissolving energy, raining down over the field like blue fire falling from a collapsing sky. Madara fell. He hit the ground on both feet because even falling, even broken, even after the effort of resisting something no other soul had resisted for even an instant, he would not land on his knees. His body was damaged, internal, profound, the cost of fighting Soul Snatch visible in the blood at his mouth and the dimming of his Rinnegan. He looked up at Naruto, who descended from the height of the dissolved Susanoo with the same effortless float, touching ground 10 feet from the legendary warrior. They faced each other at ground level, Madara bleeding from the effort of his resistance, Naruto immaculate. "You wanted a world without war," Naruto said. He walked forward. Each step was the click of a period at the end of a sentence. "You built a plan to force peace through absolute domination, to put humanity to sleep under one dream, rather than let it bleed through 1,000 choices." He stopped a body's length away. "The plan was wrong, but I understand why someone who lived what you lived would build it." Madara attacked no more words. The final engagement of the greatest warrior the shinobi world had produced. Truth-seeking balls launched, all 9 of them, each one a sphere of universal nullification, each one capable of erasing any substance it touched from the periodic table of existence. They converged on Naruto from every angle simultaneously. End of world. 9 spheres of black appeared, one for each truth-seeking ball, and met them in midair. Black met black. Nullification met negation. And Naruto's spheres won, because his negation was older and deeper and came from a source that predated the concepts the truth-seeking balls were built on. Each collision produced a flash of something that was not light and not dark, but something between. And when the flashes cleared, the truth-seeking balls were gone. Madara formed meteorites. His hands wove signs that called stone from the sky, massive, burning, falling rocks that blocked the sun and turned the morning into twilight. 3 of them, each the size of a city block, falling toward the field with the inevitability of geological time compressed into seconds. Naruto looked up. The falling rocks were silhouetted against the sky like 3 new moons, their burning surfaces turning the air to fire as they descended. Absolute end. He pointed at the first, a beam of black energy, not fired but opened, a door into nothing that happened to have direction, struck the meteorite and it ceased. The mass was there and then it wasn't, the sky returning where stone had blocked it a moment before. Second meteorite, same gesture, same beam, same result. The sky turning purple around the dissolution point, the color spreading like ink in water before fading. Third, the sky went black as the final meteorite was consumed, and for 10 seconds the field existed in premature night, the only light the red glow of Naruto's eyes and the fading purple of Madara's Rinnegan. When the light returned, Madara was moving. He had used the darkness, smart, using every tool, every opening, every fraction of advantage a century of combat experience could identify. His body moved at 6-path speed, closing the distance, his fist gathering chakra dense enough to warp the air around it. Naruto caught the fist, one hand. His white glove wrapped around Madara's knuckles, and the impact produced a shockwave that flattened everything within 50 meters. Trees, rocks, the ground itself pressing down under the transmitted force. They stood, locked, fist against palm, Madara's full strength against Naruto's casual grip. The ground between them cracked and deepened. "How disappointing," Naruto said. His eyes held Madara's. "I was told you were worth remembering." Madara's free hand formed a sign, a clone, a shadow, something to strike from the angle Naruto was not watching. "I do not fight," Naruto said. "I conclude." Both his palms opened. He released Madara's fist and spread both arms wide, both hands facing the legendary warrior from a body's length away. "This ends not because I am angry. It ends because I have decided." Absolute end. Both palms, full output. A door opened, not a beam, not a lance, but a hole in existence itself. Both hands producing the technique simultaneously at maximum capacity, their outputs merging into something that exceeded any previous use by an order of magnitude that defied measurement. The sky above the field turned black. Not 10 seconds, not 30. The darkness spread from the point of origin in a circle that covered the sky from horizon to horizon. Every person watching, from the ridgeline, from the village walls, from the perimeter, where shinobi had gathered to witness what was happening to the landscape between their village and the horizon, covered their eyes. Birds for miles fell from the sky. The air pressure changed, the temperature dropped, reality registered the technique as an event, and the event's weight was recorded in the behavior of everything within detection range. The ground between Naruto's palms and where Madara stood opened, split along fault lines that had nothing to do with geology and everything to do with the passage of something too heavy for the earth to hold. A canyon formed, narrow, deep, the edges of it glowing with a fading purple-black that took minutes to dissipate. When the sky returned, slowly, the darkness receding from the edges inward like a tide retreating, the field was flat, scoured. The Gedo statue was gone, the truth-seeking balls were gone, the meteorite craters were gone, the perfect Suzanu's impact marks were gone. Madara Uchiha was gone, not sealed, not imprisoned, not defeated in any sense that implied continued existence in any form. Gone the way a fire is gone when every piece of fuel has been consumed and every ember has cooled to ash, and the ash has been scattered by wind until it ceases to be identifiable as ash. The greatest warrior the shinobi world had ever produced, the man who had challenged gods and cheated death, and shaped the course of history from behind its curtain for a century. Ceased, Naruto lowered his hands. His suit was immaculate. His gloves were clean. He looked at the flat field for a moment, at the empty space where something remarkable had stood. Then he turned around. On the ridgeline a half-mile back, Zabuza had his blade driven into the earth beside him. He was leaning on it, one hand on the pommel, looking at the flat field where a landscape used to be. His scarred face held something that defied a single word. Pride lived in it, certainty. The deep, bone-level satisfaction of a man who bet everything on something impossible and watched it prove him right beyond any margin of doubt. He laughed. That scraping rock sound. Full, raw, alive. There it is, he said to nobody and everybody. That's what I follow. Haku stood beside him. His face was smooth, peaceful. The face of someone who had searched for absolute purpose and found it in exactly the form he needed it to take. He said nothing. His silence was agreement. Sasuke was on the ridgeline too, both Sharingan burning, every Tomoe spinning at maximum speed, his eyes drinking in the flat field and what it meant. He had watched the entire fight, every exchange, every technique, every moment where the greatest Uchiha who ever lived threw everything his bloodline could produce at the thing Naruto was and watched it prove insufficient. The Sharingan was not enough, would never be enough. Not against this. But the Sharingan was not what Sasuke was anymore. He was more than his eyes, more than his bloodline, more than the name Madara had made into something feared and revered. He was what he chose to be, what he built with what he had. He deactivated his Sharingan. His eyes returned to black. He looked at the flat field with human eyes, and what he saw was not a defeat. It was a horizon. The first clean horizon he'd seen since the night his family died. Gaara stood at the village wall with his sand curled tight. His teal eyes, ringed with darkness that was slowly, fractionally beginning to lighten, watched Naruto turn from the field and begin walking back toward the village. Shukaku was silent inside him, had been silent for months. The silence was no longer alien. It was home. Sakura was at the field hospital's edge. Her hands had stopped glowing. There were no more patients to treat, the battle over, the aftermath finite and manageable. She watched the figure in the black suit walking toward the village gates, and the thing in her chest was so warm and so large and so specific that she could no longer pretend she didn't know its name. She didn't say it. She didn't need to. Some things don't require naming to be true. Kakashi watched from beside her. His Sharingan was covered again. His book was somehow back in his hand, though his eye was not on the page. He was looking at his student, at the thing that had been placed in his care by a system that had no idea what it was assigning, and his one visible eye held something that mixed bewilderment with a hard-won peace. He had been asking himself for months what Naruto was. The wrong question, it turned out. The right one was what he was becoming. And the answer to that, visible in the way he walked toward the village, toward the people, toward the life he was choosing to occupy, was something Kakashi found he could work with. Obito was there, at the edge, having followed, Having watched his master's plan, the infrastructure that had given his decade of grief its shape and direction, erased from existence in a single technique. He stood at the perimeter with no mask and no plan and no identity beyond the name he'd abandoned. He was just Obito, just the boy under the rock. For the first time in a decade, that was enough. The days that followed were smaller, and therefore larger. Konoha rebuilt. For the last time, maybe. The scaffolding went up. The hammers rang. New wood covered old scars. The village that had survived everything, the fox, the invasion, the 6 paths, the resurrection of its oldest enemy, was still here, still standing. Changed in ways that would take years to fully understand, but standing. Naruto walked through the reconstruction, and the people who looked up as he passed looked up with something new. It was building, accreting, gaining mass and definition like a word being spelled letter by letter, and none of them had all the letters yet, but the shape was becoming legible. Respect, gratitude, awe, fear, warmth, trust. Something that needed a new word because no existing one contained all of it. They were building a word for what you feel when something terrible and beautiful decides to live among you and protect you, and you have no way to pay it except to be worth the protection. The word wasn't ready yet, but it was coming. His apartment, his table, the black roses in their vase, the teapot that never ran empty, because empty was a condition Naruto did not permit in things he cared about. The evening light coming through the window and painting the room in amber, Gaara visited first. He sat across the table. Naruto poured tea. They sat together in a silence that lasted 10 full minutes, and the silence was not empty. It was full of things that didn't need to be said between two people who had carried monsters and been defined by them and survived the definition. "Thank you," Gaara said. 2 words. Simple. Final. They meant everything beneath them. The silence, the choice, the rooftop conversation that had changed the direction of a life. The boy who had spent 12 years being told he was a weapon, thanking the being who had shown him that weapons could choose what they were pointed at. Naruto said nothing in return. He poured a second cup, set it before Gaara. The steam rose between them. That was all. It was enough. Sasuke came that evening. He stood in the doorway, one step inside, his foot crossing the threshold the way it hadn't during his first visit. Progress measured in inches that mattered more than miles. He looked across the room at Naruto, who was at his table with a book and a cup, and the permanent composure of something that had existed longer than the concept of hurry. "I thought power was a destination," Sasuke said. His voice was steady. His eyes were black. No Sharingan, no activation, just human eyes looking at something inhuman with the full weight of having tried to understand it. Something you reached. He was quiet for a moment. "It's not, is it?" "No," Naruto said. The word was simple, final. It contained nothing extra and nothing was missing from it. Sasuke nodded, once, then turned and left without looking back. His shoulders were different as he walked away, looser. The tension of a decade, the tension of chasing, of hating, of dedicating every breath to a destination. Drained from his posture step by step, he walked home to figure out what strength meant when it wasn't a race. And the figuring out felt, for the first time, like something he could do at his own pace. Sakura came with food. She arrived at the apartment door with a container in her hands and a flush on her cheeks, and the determined expression of someone who had rehearsed this moment 14 times and was not going to let the 15th attempt fail to materialize. "I brought this," she said, held out the container. It was onigiri. Simple, handmade, slightly asymmetrical in the way that indicated someone without professional kitchen experience had made them with excessive care. Naruto looked at the container, at her, at the flush that was spreading from her cheeks to her ears. He took it, opened it, examined the contents. The onigiri were not suited to his preferences. They were simple, where he preferred complex, plain, where he gravitated toward the refined. Both of them were aware of this. The awareness lived in the room like a third person neither of them acknowledged. He ate one. He ate it without comment, without correction, without the formal critique he would have given a restaurant that served him something beneath his standards. He ate it, and his expression did not change, and his manners did not falter, and he finished it and reached for a second. Sakura watched him eat, and something in her chest went very warm. warm enough to feel through her entire body, warm enough to bring a brightness to her eyes that she did nothing to suppress. She made the decision, full, conscious, absolute, to say nothing about it. Some things didn't need to be spoken to be real. Some things were better for the silence they lived in. She stayed for tea. They talked about nothing important. The reconstruction, a technique she was developing, a book he was reading that he described in terms that made it sound like a foreign language, and she pretended to follow, because listening to his voice when it was this soft was its own reward. She left an hour later, and Naruto watched her go from the window, and his red and black eyes held something that did not yet have a name, but was building toward one at a pace that suited something older than hurry. Haku watched all of this from his position in the corner of the room. His face held its certainty, unwavering, complete. He had searched the world for absolute purpose and found it in the form of a boy in a black suit who ate poorly made onigiri without complaint, because the hands that made them mattered more than the result. He found what he was looking for. It turned out to be exactly what he needed it to be. Zabuza was asleep in the other corner, his massive frame folded into a chair that should not have supported his weight or his posture. One leg over the arm, the executioner's blade propped against the wall beside him, his head back and his mouth slightly open, and his breathing the deep, unbothered rhythm of a man who sleeps well for the first time in decades because the thing he follows has made fear irrelevant. It should not have been physically possible to sleep in that position. And yet, Kakashi came last. He arrived without announcement, which was unusual because Kakashi always announced himself, always had the lazy posture and the apologetic eye crinkle and the performance of casualness that served as his social armor. He entered the apartment without performing. He sat down across from Naruto without being invited, the most natural he had ever been in this space. He looked at the boy across the table. This thing wearing a 12-year-old's face in a black suit who had ended a war today that the entire shinobi world could not have ended. His one visible eye was steady, open, seeking something. "Do you know what you are?" Kakashi asked. Naruto looked at him. "I have always known." "That's not what I'm asking." Kakashi leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his visible eye holding Naruto's red and black gaze with the steadiness of a man who has decided that whatever looks back will not make him look away. "What do you want to be?" The question sat in the room. It occupied space. It had weight. It was the first time anyone had asked Naruto this. Not what he was, not what he could do, not what he would allow or forbid or destroy. What he wanted to be. As if the answer were still open. As if something that vast and that old could still choose its own shape. Outside, Konoha was loud with rebuilding. Hammers on new wood, voices calling across scaffolding, the sound of a village putting itself back together with the stubborn, persistent refusal to stay broken that defined every place where people chose to keep living despite what living cost them. Inside, Naruto looked out the window. His red and black eyes caught the late afternoon light, amber through glass, warm on his features, turning the immaculate suit to something softer. The sharp edges of his outline blurring where the light touched longest. Something in those eyes, something very small, very new, visible only to someone watching with the full attention of a man who had been trying to understand this boy since the day a bell test broke his mind, was not what it was at the start of this story. It was not softer. It was not weaker. It was not less than what it had been. It was more. It was something that had found an answer it didn't know it was looking for. In the shape of a village that kept rebuilding. In the hands that made asymmetrical onigiri. In the boy who stood in doorways learning that power wasn't a destination. In the old man in a hospital bed who said thank you, like it was the largest word in any language. Naruto looked out the window at the village he had saved 3 times without once being asked. At the new wood and the scaffolding and the people below who were building something they did not yet have a name for, but were building it anyway, because building was what people did when they chose to keep going. "I want to see what they build," he said, and he sounded for the first time like he fully meant it. The afternoon light held the room. The tea was warm. Haku smiled his knowing smile, and Zabuza snored in his impossible chair, and Kakashi sat back with something in his visible eye that looked like the first page of an answer to a question he'd been asking since the bell test. And outside, always outside, the village was loud and alive and imperfect and continuing. Naruto poured another cup. The steam rose. The light moved across the table. Somewhere below, a child laughed, and the sound carried through the window into a room that smelled of black roses and good tea, and the specific warmth that comes from a being older than civilization choosing of its own vast and terrible will to sit at a table with people it has decided are worth its time. The world was different now, permanently, irrevocably, changed by what had passed through it. From a dark alley at age 7 to a flat field where the greatest warrior in history stopped being. The story had moved from that first moment to this one, and this one held something the first had not. It held a choice, made freely, by something that could have chosen anything. Naruto sipped his tea, set the cup down, looked at the amber light on his gloves and the village through the glass, and the future taking shape in wood and noise and stubborn, beautiful persistence. Kukuku. The sun went down over Konoha, over scaffolding and new timber and streets that would carry different footprints tomorrow, over a village that did not yet know what it was becoming, but was becoming it anyway. Brick by brick, board by board, choice by choice, in the long shadow of something that had decided to watch it happen and found, against every expectation that immortality and power and millennia of existence had prepared it for, that watching was enough, more than enough. The window held the last light. The room held its warmth. And the boy in the black suit held his cup and his silence and his choice. And outside the world kept building. And he let it.
What an insane journey. Diablo Naruto completely redefined power in the shinobi world. Thanks for watching this full story. If you enjoyed it, smash that subscribe button and drop a like for more epic what-if content.